Good morning. Winter fuel vote rebellion.
Rebel Labour MPs could refuse to vote with the government on their planned cuts.
Health Secretary Wes Streeting hits out, says he's not happy with the decision, but insists it is necessary.
This comes as tensions rise at the TUC Congress, with union leaders slamming Starmer's decision and questions rising about the PM facing flashpoints with the unions.
Backing Badenoch, 1/3 of the shadow cabinet backs Kemi for Tory leadership, saying she has the X factor and can cut through for voters.
The US Secretary of State Antony Blinken will arrive in the UK today to begin a 2-day visit covering Ukraine and Middle East talks.
We'll be joined by the former Chancellor Nadim Zahawi to tell us about his journey from fleeing Iraq as a child refugee to holding one of the highest offices in Westminster.
And as a secondary school is criticised for degrading girls after pupils were made to line up and have their skirts measured, we're asking, have school uniform standards slipped?
And in the sport this morning, Yannick Sinner becomes the first Italian to win the US Open. Scotland concede late again last night to Cristiano Ronaldo's 901st career goal. And the Paralympics comes to an end with 2 more Team GB gold medals.
Good morning. It has been a very wet weekend for some of us. What does the weather have in store over the next couple of days? Find out with me coming up in a little bit.
It's 6:01. I'm Isabel Webster.
And I'm Dawn Newsroom, and this is GB News Breakfast.
It's been a bit of a lively start to the Monday morning here at the GB Newsroom.
I guess whose fault it was. Not that I'm naming and shaming, but...
Well, I did hear a rumour we were being blamed.
You smoking fags in the dressing room again? Is that what it was?
There was a fire alarm at about 5:20 this morning. Nothing to do with hairspray being sprayed in the makeup room, because we hadn't even got that far.
No, nothing
but I heard
to
the
do
security guards upstairs going, wow, the fire alarm smoking it's got set off by these hairsprayers. We're like, hang on a minute.
I'm actually blaming Paul Coyte on this one. I think it was... I mean, that takes some doing to get his hair looking like that.
You know, one does what one has to do, and if it sets everybody outside, if a big building with over 1,000 people has to be evacuated in the freezing cold at 5 o'clock in the morning just to make me look good, then so...
The truth is, he was holding my phone with the torch on to help Helen, our makeup artist, put one of my eyelashes on.
Yeah.
It is actually your new vocation, Paul.
It was.
Honestly.
Isabel has no idea. I was scrolling through her phone as I was actually doing it at the same time.
Did you see that one?
I know.
Oh, that one. And that picture, Isabel. Well,
stop it, as if. Look, let's get on with the news this morning, shall we? Because Wes Streeting, the Health Secretary, has said that he is not remotely happy about having to vote to take money away from pensioners through cuts to the winter fuel allowance.
The Health Secretary has conceded that the controversial policy will have a negative impact on his constituents, but has insisted it is a necessary move.
Well, MPs will vote tomorrow on the plans to scrap winter fuel payments for pensioners who do not qualify for pension credit.
This comes as the Tory leadership race continues, where Kemi Badenoch has the backing of more than 1/3 of the shadow cabinet.
The Shadow Defence Secretary and Shadow Business Secretary believe that Badenoch has what they describe as the X factor that could propel the Tories back into power.
Interesting. I wonder. We're now joined by GB News political correspondent Olivia Utley. Olivia, good morning. A big week in politics coming up.
A huge week. So we're going to have the vote on that winter fuel payment cut tomorrow. And it sounds as though there are about 50 Labour MPs who aren't happy with Keir Starmer's policy. About 30 of them are actually considering voting against the government or abstaining. It doesn't sound as though there's actually going to be a huge rebellion. But in the Lords, there are plenty of peers who are trying to persuade MPs to go as far as voting against the government rather than abstaining, not voting at all. That is because the Lords are very keen to try and vote down this policy altogether when it reaches that stage of its development through the Houses of Parliament. And if MPs have shown that they don't like it at all, then it would give power to the Lords to be able to vote it down. At the moment, it doesn't look like we're going to see anything like that. Obviously, Labour has an enormous majority and it's not going to struggle to get this piece of legislation through. But it is possible that but a pretty chunky handful of MPs end up voting against the government, and they could lose the whip. Keir Starmer is in no mood for compromise at the moment. In fact, he's doubled down on the policy. He said that pensioners can afford it and that it was a bad scheme and too many people were getting that winter fuel allowance. Now, that is slightly at odds with what the Health Secretary, Wes Streeting, is saying, which is essentially that he knows it's really unpopular, he hates it, but he feels that he has no other choice because of that alleged £22 billion black hole left by the Conservatives. So slightly different lines there from Keir Starmer and Wes Streeting, and a possibility for Keir Starmer tomorrow of a rebellion from his backbench. This might be the biggest challenge we've seen Keir Starmer face in his leadership so far, at least in the Commons.
And Olivia, Keir Starmer has set a precedent, hasn't he, in his response to rebellions over the child benefit cap, where he gave a number of his MPs 6-month removal of the whip. Just explain to people what that would mean in terms of a deterrent, I suppose, for any of those 30 who are on the fence. I mean, surely it'd be safer for their own, careers to go and spend an extra half an hour in the tea rooms or in the bars in Parliament rather than going in and voting against their own government.
Well, it's an interesting question. I mean, I would argue actually that perhaps it doesn't mean that much to Labour MPs at this stage in Parliament to have the whip suspended, especially if it's only for a specific amount of time, for 6 months. Normally, when an MP gets the whip removed, and just to be clear, getting the whip removed means that those MPs can no longer sit as Labour MPs. They can no longer say that they are part of the Labour Party. They can still vote with the Labour Party, and in all but name, they can essentially be Labour MPs, but technically they won't have the Labour whip. Normally, when the whip is removed, it's removed for an indefinite amount of time and may not ever be restored, whereas what Keir Starmer did with the child benefit cap is suspend the whip for a period of 6 months. Now, how much does it matter to those MPs to be suspended for 6 months? If they're sort of pretty new to Parliament and they don't think that they've got a chance of being promoted to the cabinet anytime soon, then, well, perhaps it doesn't matter to them that much, particularly those with quite slim majorities and those with lots of pensioners in their constituencies. Do they want to be remembered for the whole of this Parliament for voting in favour of this very, very unpopular policy, or would they rather just bite the bullet, be removed from Labour for 6 months, take their punishment quietly, and then go back to the Labour benches? I suspect that a few of them will probably pick the latter.
Olivia, 2 months in, and this is already a poll tax moment, isn't it?
It does feel a little bit like a poll tax moment for Keir Starmer. It's really interesting seeing how differently Labour cabinet ministers are talking about this. There are those who, like Wes Streeting, are very happy to say that it is an extremely unpopular move and that they don't like it at all. And their line is that they've been forced into it by the Conservatives. But Keir Starmer is actually sounding a little bit less conciliatory this morning, sort of saying that pensioners can afford it and actually pointing towards the triple lock to show that pensioners perhaps won't be so badly off. And he also talks about the millionaires who have so far been profiting from this winter fuel payment, which hasn't been targeted at all. So it seems as though the Prime Minister is taking a slightly different tack from what we've seen for the last few months, which is essentially just to say, well, I'm sorry, I don't want to be doing anything that I'm doing, but the Conservatives made me do it, to saying, actually, this is something which we can probably afford, which pensioners can probably afford, and might be a good way to redistribute that wealth. That is going to be more tricky for Labour MPs to swallow than the previous line of, well, there wasn't anything we could do, the Tories left us in this mess.
Olivia, can we talk a little bit about the Tory leadership contest? Because, again, so many of these little hiccups for the Labour Party are a great opportunity for the opposition. Perhaps they're not making as much of it as they would if they had their leader in place. Reports out this morning, Kemi Badenoch has the support of a third of the shadow cabinet. Will that stand her in good stead for the vote this week, do you think?
Yes, she's now got 10 of 29 of the shadow cabinet, including two shadow ministers who've written a piece in the Telegraph this morning. That's James Cartledge and Kevin Hollinrake. This is very good news for Kemi Badenoch. In the first round of voting last week, she got 22 votes against Robert Jenrick's 28 votes, 6 votes behind. It doesn't sound like very much, but of course we're talking about very, very small numbers here, given there are only 122 Conservative MPs in Parliament. At the beginning of this race, Kemi Badenoch was very much seen as the firm favourite, but last week questions were being raised about whether she would manage to get the support of MPs. She's not known generally to be that popular among Conservative MPs, not particularly because of her politics, but more because of her sort of attitude in the tea room. She's seen as she can be a little bit sort of ratty, a bit difficult to get on with. The fact that she has now managed to secure such a big chunk of that shadow cabinet, who of course are her own colleagues, she was in the cabinet under Rishi Sunak, is very good news for her, because if she makes it onto that final two, the final two get sent to the members, and the members of the Conservative Party at home get to pick who the leader is. If she makes the final two, all polling suggests that she is going to win.
Thanks very much, Olivia. It reminds me, Dawn, of that time the microphones were left on and they were talking about Theresa May.
Oh,
that very
ouch.
difficult woman. Well, it seems difficult women have made it to the top of the Tory party in the past.
Well,
Might stand there in
exactly.
good stead.
But this winter fuel allowance, Isabel, is not going away. Instantly, so many of you are getting very, very angry about Anita. Good morning, Anita says, sorry, you talk about Labour MPs saying they don't like the winter fuel allowance being removed, but still don't care about it enough to say no. They don't care about their constituents. They just want to be in power. Kev, Dave, Paul, all saying the same things this morning.
Keep those thoughts coming in, gbnews.com/your say. Now, new analysis has revealed that significant corruption took place in the handing out of COVID contracts during the pandemic.
Official reports identified 135 high-risk contracts with a value of a staggering $15.3 billion had 3 or more corruption red flags.
Well, Transparency International UK are requesting that the National Audit Office, Public Accounts Committee and the Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, now look into their findings.
Joining us in the studio is CEO of Transparency International UK, Daniel Bruce. Daniel, thank you very much for joining us. Daniel, just to explain a little bit about what you do, what you're about.
So Transparency International UK is the British chapter of the global Transparency International Coalition, which fights corruption around the world. One of our key objectives in the UK is the protection of public resources from corruption or misappropriation of public funds. This study out today is a landmark publication for us. As you've mentioned, we've analysed 5,000 COVID contracts, totalling £45 billion in public expenditure from the height of the early crisis in 2020 through to the early part of 2023, and found those 3 or more corruption red flags, drawing upon international best practice in that £15 billion, so 1 in every £3 spent. Only 135 contracts, but obviously very significant by their value in terms of taxpayers' money.
Look, everybody is very mindful that you don't want to see those in power handing out highly lucrative contracts to their pals, who then become extremely wealthy off the back of it, and taxpayers' money and all the rest of it. However, what I suppose could be said and argued in their defence, and I'm sure will be said by the Boris Johnson administration, who were in charge at the time, is that this wasn't normal business as usual. You talk about international best practice. Can that be applicable during a period of national or global crisis as we were facing at the time?
Yes, it's certainly an argument that we've heard in the past when we've looked into this issue, and I'm afraid our research finds that in the UK context it doesn't actually bear much scrutiny when you get under the bonnet of what was going on. The UK really was an outlier in the way that it was spending public money during the pandemic. We were using uncompetitive direct awarding of contracts, not just for months, but years into the pandemic response, when all other countries in the EU bloc, for example, had stopped doing that pretty quickly. And in our analysis, we couldn't find anywhere else in the world where a government introduced something like the so-called VIP lane, which was that mechanism that allowed those with political connections to put their products and services in front of those making decisions around contracts with an advantage, and that makes up £4 billion of that 15 billion that I mentioned earlier. So the UK really was an outlier, and it continued to treat this as a very significant emergency for not just months, but years.
So the defence the government always come up with, as Isabel said, we were panicking. I mean, you know, obviously, you know, the people that we were close to who had, you know, something they could offer us, we went to. That's not corruption. That was us trying to do the best for the public during the pandemic. But really interesting, no other country, no other European country did anything similar at all.
No, I mean, there are still to this day public contracts from 2020 that don't have their full information transparently published as it should be. Ukraine was publishing all of its contracts within 24 hours of awarding them. In the UK, we were well over a year late with all of them. So there were less well-off economies doing a better job of their transparency. I should stress here, we don't find a smoking gun. We don't find a conspiracy. What we find is a pattern of systemic failure, both weak procurement laws going into the pandemic, but then a set of political choices, which any government of any political hue could have made, that reduced our defences to the potential corruption of public money and which allowed systemic bias in the awarding of contracts and allowed, as we now know, in many cases, people who'd just set up companies less than 100 days old to win significant amounts of public money to then go on not to deliver those products. And I think it's those sort of amounts of money that I'm sure make the public very angry.
So what do you want to happen as a result of your report? Is this about strengthening those defences or is it about some sort of recourse?
It's both, actually, two very distinct things. We call on the government today to launch a full probe into the 135 contracts that we've identified. The process of appointing a COVID corruption commissioner began last week. Applications are open, I believe, until the end of this month, so that's moving ahead. We'd like to think we've done some of the heavy lifting for that commissioner by looking at these 5,000 and whittling it down to 135. Where there is money to be clawed back, that should be clawed back. Where there is culpability, there should be public accountability for poor decisions made. But absolutely, the other part of it is that we call on the new government to implement the reforms and the lessons learned from this affair to strengthen emergency procurement rules and processes.
Have you had any government response yet to your findings?
Well, we published an interim study in 2021, which said that, all contracts were awarded properly, they went through the proper process. And the Conservative Party today has said that, ministers weren't involved in the direct award of contracts. What that is disregarding is that the systemic bias, the potential abuse of power, was happening before the contracts were awarded, happening before due process was applied. And it glosses over the woeful lack of transparency and the woeful losses to stockpiles of unusable PPE, for example.
Gosh. Right. Well, Daniel Bruce, CEO of Transparency International, thank you very much for bringing that to our attention this morning and let us know how it all progresses.
Thank you.
OK, let's have a look at some of the other stories coming into the newsroom this morning.
The Hollywood actor Idris Elba will join the Prime Minister in Downing Street this morning to launch a new effort to tackle knife crime. He's highlighting a coalition which will aim to bring together campaign groups, families of people who've lost their lives to knife crime and young people who've been affected by it. Ministers have already taken steps to ban so-called ninja swords and plan to strengthen the laws around the online sales of knives.
And Team GB finished runners-up in the Paris Paralympics medal table with a haul of 124 medals, second only to China. British athletes brought back 49 gold, 44 silver and 31 bronze medals, securing titles in 18 of the 19 sports entered.
And the Army will mark the accession of King Charles today with a 41-gun salute in Green Park and a 62-gun royal salute at the Tower of London. While the anniversary of him taking the throne fell yesterday, gun salutes don't take place on the Sabbath. The King spent the day privately with a trip to church on what was the second anniversary of his mother's death.
And weight loss drugs are being used more frequently around the world, but some experts are concerned that people are using them incorrectly.
Well, new research has revealed the hotspots in the UK for people researching these drugs, with Bolton being at the top of the list. Perhaps if you're watching us from Bolton this morning, get in touch if you're one of those people who've been researching these.
Well, our North West of England reporter Sophie Reaper spoke to one woman who lost 10 stone using one of these drugs.
Saxenda, Wegovy and, of course, Ozempic, just some of the weight loss drugs making recent headlines. Used to suppress appetite, if taken correctly, these drugs can help those who need it to lose large amounts of body fat. Just one of those people was Colleen Calnan.
I was over 25 stone at that point and was delusional, and I had amazing results. I lost like 10 stone, and it was a hard journey, 150%, but it was one of the best things I've done. Obviously I've had a gastric sleeve now I'm back to what I should be, I suppose.
But despite her amazing results, Colleen still advises caution.
It's dangerous. It's a black label medication. Yes, it changed my life, but it needs to be used responsibly.
Speaking on weight loss drugs, the National Medical Director for the NHS has also warned medical professionals to take care. He said they can be dangerous if they're being prescribed without proper checks, so online pharmacies and clinics need to act responsibly. They should have safeguards in place, including checking a person's weight in person to keep patients safe. At the Prestwich Pharmacy in Greater Manchester, they're advising people only to use these products with the appropriate support.
Always use a professional. You may need to get bloods done. You certainly have to measure your blood pressure. It's really important that you have a support network that helps you get to your target goal. This isn't about a quick fix, it is about a lifestyle change.
However, despite warnings, these weight loss drugs are still in high demand. In particular, new data from the Simple online pharmacy has found that 4 of the top 10 places in the UK researching these drugs can be found in Greater Manchester, with the town of Bolton taking the top spot. Would you ever consider using a weight loss drug?
No, not me. Not because of my age and because of the complications of using them.
I would, just because I think it's easier than going to the gym. And obviously everyone my age wants to be skinny.
I think if it work and it wouldn't have really bad side effects, then absolutely.
If you're going to lose weight, you should do it the ethical way, like working out.
A topic that divides opinion, the use of weight loss drugs has skyrocketed in recent years. And for now at least, it's a growing trend. Sophie Reaper, GB News.
Right, let's take a look at the forecast. I don't know what it was like for you this morning. It was absolutely chucking it down as I was driving in. Had windscreen wipers on full. Here's Craig Snell. That's the technical description.
Yeah, I got that.
Craig Snell with your forecast.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good morning, welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast from the Met Office. Well, today for most of us it's certainly going to be a bit of a drier and brighter one compared to the weekend, but there's still plenty of cloud around first thing this morning across many central and eastern parts. Sunshine further west, and that will gradually push its way a little bit further eastwards as the day goes on. So by the afternoon I think many central areas beginning to brighten up, but always the best of the sunshine further west. But then later on in the day we will start to see this next area of cloud and rain spreading across the far west of Scotland and Northern Ireland. A fresher feeling day for all of us. We could just still see highs reaching the high teens across the south. So as we end Monday afternoon, we start to see this area of rain moving across many western parts of Scotland. Eastern Scotland hanging on to some drier and brighter weather here. That rain also arriving into Northern Ireland. But for many parts of England and Wales, it should be a fairly dry end to the day, although we may still just hang on to the cloud and some outbreaks of rain across the very far east of England. So if we move into the evening and overnight period, this area of cloud and rain will slowly spread its way southeastwards. But for many southern areas, we probably will remain dry with the best of the clear skies, and winds also beginning to increase across the far north, giving a very blustery end to the night. And for most of us, a cooler night, but for most towns and cities, we will hold up into double figures. So Tuesday morning we start off with some sunshine across the southeast, but this area of cloud and rain will continue to track its way southwards. Behind it, much colder conditions, a strengthening wind, and that will bring in a fairly frequent amount of blustery showers, and some of these showers will be quite heavy and thundery. By the end of the afternoon, that cloud and rain will arrive into the far south, but hanging on to something a little bit warmer here, but as I mentioned, further north, pretty cold for the time of year.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
It's time now for the Great British Giveaway.
Which is good news, at least.
Yeah, exactly, unlike the weather. It's the biggest cash prize that we've ever given away. It is a whopping 36 grand.
Oh, God, that's like having an extra £3,000 tax-free in your bank account each month.
Yes, please.
For an entire year. God, what would you do with that, Isabel? Get your windscreen wipers fixed by the sounds of it. Well, she can't enter, but you can, and here's how you do it.
This is your chance to win a £36,000 secret salary in the latest Great British Giveaway. That's like having £3,000 each month for an entire year. Extra cash in your bank account that you can do whatever you like with. Take a year off and keep it to yourself. You don't even need to tell the taxman, as it's totally tax-free. For a chance to win £36,000 in tax-free cash, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63232.
Winning the US Open, so we'll do that.
All right.
Okay, interesting.
Thanks, Whitey. See you in a sec.
I'm Andrew Pearce. This is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK.
We're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Sunday with Michael Portillo from 11, only on GB News.
Cup Classique, previously known as Méthode Cup Classique, is South Africa's answer to the famous French fizz.
They basically have to be made in South Africa and also by the traditional method. So it's exactly the same method as champagne, but is made in a different place. So they can't call it champagne because it's not made in Champagne, but it's very similar.
And on the other hand, in Prosecco, it all happens in a sort of great vat.
Yes,
doesn't it?
Yes.
Which is why Prosecco tastes different from
Yeah.
other sparkling wines.
Prosecco will taste much more fruity because you don't have the thing called lees aging. Insert the wine with brioche, biscuity, toasty flavours and aromas, which makes it much more complex.
Here we've got a thing called Journey's End.
Yes.
And would you like to tell us, I've said that people didn't want to splash out on champers. They might want to go the Cap Classique route.
Yes.
What would they be saving? How much might that cost in a shop?
So this one here will cost you about £17. So it is considerably, I guess, better value for money than champagne.
But I'd also comment that it's probably a good deal cheaper than English sparkling wine, which is interesting.
Yes, that is correct.
Now, this
Dessert.
second one is
Yes.
called Kleiner Salzer.
It is, yes.
And you told me this is a little more expensive than the first one.
It is.
What price were we talking about here?
About 20.
About 20.
Yes.
Not vastly more.
No.
Are we going to taste £3 worth of improvement? Oh, and by the way, it went so beautifully with the cheese, just as you advised. Are South African sparkling wines, Cup Classique, are they pretty well available in English wine shops, British wine shops?
They are, yes. You can find them in all of the supermarkets. Graham Beck, and that's on offer at the moment, actually. That's $11.99 from Waitrose, which is exceptional value.
That is insane.
Yes, it is. And you can also... So I bought with me today, so this is a Pinot Noir only, so that's a rosé sparkling.
GB News, the People's Channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Bev Turner. Thank you for joining us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Right, let's go all through the sport with Coity this morning. Look, it wasn't the final, I suppose, that all of us were hoping for with Jack Draper. But
Jack Draper would have won it.
Impressive.
I think it
weren't for the vomiting.
If it wasn't for the 3 times that was, wasn't it, Friday night? I know. Oh. The thing is, there's got to be... Is there a part where you just think, I'm a professional, I'm going to keep going, I'm just going to do it here and now? I should be featuring the sport, really, but you know what I mean, it was a bit...
I know what you mean.
But bless him, I think he would have beaten Taylor Fritz... but Yannick Sinner is the best player. So Yannick Sinner won the US Open yesterday.
Yeah, it's his second slam of the year.
It is second slam. I mean, he's the first world #1 to win the US Open since 2007.
OK.
First player to win his first 2 slams in the same year since 1977. youngest ever to win both hardcourt Grand Slams in the same year, which is that, the Australian Open. So you can see it's a real changing of the guard, though, because, you know, the big three, now they're all knocking on a bit, and two of them have, well, one and a half of them have gone. And now it looks like it's going to be Yannick Sinner because he won 2, Alcaraz won 2, and it's always going to happen. You know, things move on. They're both in their early 20s, and that's how I think it's going to be from now on. And Jack Draper is going to be part of that.
Well, they're pals, aren't they?
They are.
Hearing that Yannick Sinner, who's Italian, cooks pasta for Jack Draper because they're obviously on the tour
is that
together.
what caused the vomiting?
Well, exactly. That's exactly what I was thinking. Maybe there's a conspiracy.
So he cooks pasta, and then the other one cooks roast beef and Yorkshire pudding, does he? It's like
there's anything in return.
Coity, poisonous pasta, West Ham Spurs, anyone? Lasagna Gate, remember that?
Do I remember that? Of course I remember that. That's a different story altogether, but I don't think that would happen in the tennis. But there we are. So a very good performance, a very enjoyable US Open, and as far as Jack's concerned, you know what, maybe something to keep the food down in future, and then things will look better.
22, he's got a whole career ahead.
Do you think he was 22? When I was 22, I used to feel that way the morning after a night out.
Yeah.
So maybe that's exactly what it was.
Yes, exactly. I'm surprised you can remember that long ago.
I do. It was cheap, but it's fair. Portugal 2, Scotland 1. This is in the Nations League. From football yesterday, Scott McTominay, he scored for Scotland. See, it looked like you're thinking Scotland are going to get smashed by Portugal, you know, especially after Croatia the other day. And Scott McTominay scored after 7 minutes. And it's like, well, surely not. Is this possible? Then, no, Bruno Fernandes equalised in the second half. But what Scotland seem to do is they're very good at conceding right at the very, very end. And sure enough, and it's Cristiano Ronaldo, we spoke about him last week.
Yeah. Yes.
The fact of whether he should, you know, he's just picking himself to play. But then again, when you do that, and it's his, 901st career goal, he acted as if he just won the World Cup, as he always does. But anyway, so a late goal, and then so Scotland lose. Northern Ireland lost to Bulgaria and Wales. The glamour tie of Wales versus Montenegro is this evening.
Well, I mean, you know, it's got a certain appeal to it.
Yes.
Yes.
It has.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of one exactly. But
England will play tomorrow night, and of course there's all the national anthem.
How long does this tournament go on for?
Well, the thing is, it's kind of a tournament and kind of isn't. It's just they're glorified friendlies. So UEFA would never say that, but it is. And the amount of people that are actually really bothered, and I think most people are really annoyed. The fact it's 3 games into the Premier.
Just
3 games in.
Just can we have some proper football?
Every year we get going. Everybody gets into the Premier. Oh, now it's an international break. You know, we enjoy the tournaments, but these sort of things...
OK.
Take him on.
You're promising us Dortmund players versus 100 kids. What's this all about?
Right, now, this happened yesterday. This is a friendly. Jurgen Klopp was there, former Dortmund manager as well. Now, before we play this, I'll give you a little background. There were legends of Dortmund. There's Lukas Piszczek, who's Polish, and Jakub Blaszczykowski and Yuri Sahin. So these are 3 Dortmund legends. They played hundreds of games between them. So what they did, and you know what, they came up with a great idea. I'd love to see this here. So they had these 3 pros, Dortmund legends, play 100 kids to see how they get. Now, have a look at this. Now, look, there we are. I think we've got hopefully we've got the game. So 3 of them will play. Look, there's the opposition. If we can take away where it says taking on the kids, so then we can see it a little bit better. There we are. There's all the 100 kids. That's them scoring a goal. Oh, is that all we've got? I was hoping that we'd have a lot more. That's a bit poor.
Very small.
It was about 3 seconds of it. Hopefully we'll have a little bit more for you, but I'd show the whole game. But, sorry?
What age children? They didn't look that small.
Well, no, they are. I think that from the look at them, they probably look about sort of 9, 10 years old.
Gosh.
Izzy, I didn't go deeply into the ages of the 100 kids.
Far away, it looks like they're huge, but I can't tell.
But how brilliant for those children to play with heroes.
I know, isn't it great?
Yeah,
and you see one of the kids score, and he was given all the celebrations, but, you know, and the thing is, I know what professional footballers are like. So even though they'd be playing 100 kids, they'd still be going, right, come on, we can do this. We can be this. Or they're probably complaining, so if it was about 75 kids, we probably got a result, but the 100 we're going to struggle. But I loved it. It was a great idea. We'll play a little bit more.
Yeah, they should do it here.
Paralympics. Yep. That was lovely. The closing ceremony.
Yeah, that was last night. It's come to an end. I wonder if there's going to be like this period of mourning in Paris now all the Paralympics and Olympics are over. It's probably a good chance to get cheap merch if you're interested. But Charlotte Henshaw and Laura Sugar, our last gold medalist, that was in canoeing. So 124 medals, 49 golds. Not quite as good as it was in Rio in 2016 when they got 64 golds. But when we spoke to Richard Whitehead last week, he summed it up because I'm thinking, well, how good are we? And it seems that we're so much better than the Americans. It seems that we're in front because our Paralympians and our Paralympic situation is better than other countries. But United States, who are going to be hosting it at the Olympics next year, they're all coming up. They're all moving up and they're all trying to catch up with us. Whereas we are the ones that formed it and started this many, many years ago. But second place behind China. I mean, it's a terrific performance, what anybody says. And I think it's been really inspiring. I've really enjoyed watching it. And I'm not just saying that. I think it's been a really, really great game.
Yeah, it's been fantastic. Yeah. Absolutely brilliant, inspirational.
It actually looks like they're blowing up.
And it's also made Paris just look fantastic as well.
Yeah.
I mean,
this actually looks like
our closest neighbour.
Looks like outside my house on Saturday night when that thunderstorm was going on. But look at that. I mean, it looks fantastic.
Yeah.
And there we are.
It was much better than the opening ceremony for the main Olympics.
To be fair.
Which was a bit of a damp squig.
It was in more ways than one, but I think
we wave goodbye to the Olympics officially then, and we wave goodbye to you for now. See you.
Okay, fine.
Yeah, we're not doing an official.
Would you like me to? I've got some of those indoor fireworks that just sort of go like that. That's the best I can probably do. Yeah, stay away.
All right, stay with us for more. We're going through the papers in just a moment with Oscar Reddrop and Nikki Hodgson. See you there.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. Train services in Norfolk are suspended between Norwich and Lowestoft, where overnight engineering works have overrun. Trains on the Great Yarmouth branch that usually run via Reedham are diverting via Acle. In the West Midlands, the High Street at Quarry Bank is closed in both directions for an investigation. The M5 in Gloucestershire is closed southbound from junction 11A, the Gloucester and Cirencester turn, to 12, the Quedgeley and Hardwick turn, after an accident. There are delays towards the closure and as you divert. On the M25 in Kent, there are 4 miles of clockwise queues towards the Clackett Lane services after an accident. The queues back to junction 5. On the M26, it's taking around 20 minutes in queues approaching the M25 there because of roadworks. And in Hampshire, the Hythe ferry suspended for safety reasons.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
Good afternoon, Britain. Your lunchtime update on the stories that matter across the UK.
From breaking news and insightful analysis, inspiring stories and lively debates. You're comparing yourself to a former Prime Minister.
Which is it? Stay informed, stay updated, stay entertained.
I just don't know how anyone would not want to be there.
Every weekday from midday.
We are Good Afternoon Britain, only on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the argument. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together and what have we got, in my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently.
It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it?
It's explosive.
I mean, this is very good.
It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Right, at 6:39, we're going to take a look at your Monday morning newspapers. This is how they're shaping up.
The story also features on... sorry, we've skipped one there. The front page of The Times, which is our Starmer's headline. Starmer to give winter fuel rebels short shrift.
Here's The Telegraph is leading with a major report finding that progress in the NHS is going backwards for the first time in 50 years.
And the Daily Mail reports Labour's own research found thousands of pensioners could die if allowances act.
The Guardian leads with reports up to 50 Labour MPs could refuse to back controversial plans to cut the winter fuel allowance for pensioners, which we've been covering this morning on the programme.
And the Mirror reports an inquiry into a killer nurse, Lucy Letby, will look into whether the NHS has failed to learn from the crimes of serial killers Beverly Allitt and Harold Shipman.
So let's dip into those newspapers, shall we, this morning. We've got the former advisor to Boris Johnson, Oscar Redrop, and regular on the show, along with the author and broadcaster Nikki Hodgson, who also often appears here with us. Good morning to you both. Oscar, let's start with the winter fuel payments. We've got this big vote taking place tomorrow. It could be very bruising for the newly elected Prime Minister, but more importantly, very worrying for a lot of pensioners.
Yeah, well, that's the first and foremost the priority, absolutely. I mean, they all say politics is about choices, and this seems a particularly strategically cruel choice very early in Parliament, which from a Labour perspective, from a Keir Starmer perspective, is probably why they're trying to roll it out now, where they've got, 4 or 5 years before a next election. Let's do it now. I think the 40 to 50 rebel numbers that you've seen, you could probably halve that, if I'm honest. This is another opportunity for Starmer to kind of flex his majority and to flex his power over that majority of Labour MPs. He's proven before in previous votes that he'll come down very, very hard on rebels. I don't think this will be any different. It's interesting, Keir Starmer's whole kind of communications, kind of PR stance, I think it's what most people would probably think of him is really, really miserable. And he kind of plays that game of unpopularity, but this is actually a genuinely unpopular
Well, he's doubling
decision.
down on it, though, isn't he? He's saying the triple lock on the pension means that actually pensioners can afford this, and he points to the fact that winter fuel payments are actually going to be going down this year, and he doesn't accept this idea that, they're being cruel to OAPs.
Well, sure, we know that there's a sizable number of so-called pensioners with £1 million houses, but that's not money that you can get at. It's kind of one of those statistics that's thrown out to prove the wealth of an older generation. Actually, just going back to what Oscar said about the PR, that's really interesting because they've got the PR so wrong on this. As someone that used to work in PR, the thing they should have front-loaded with this is you're going to be so much better off because of the triple lock, and then they could have talked about the winter fuel cut secondary, and they've loaded it the front way, or the newspapers have got hold of the story and just said, we're not going to fall for what you're trying to sell us. So the strategy has been completely wrong. And I understand from Starmer's perspective, he thinks that he's gone in strong by, cracking down on the rioters. He's got to follow through now with cracking down on his staff to maintain power, because, let's be honest, there are lots of people in the Labour Party that would like to be leader other than Starmer. And that rebellion will come soon enough, and this is why he's taking such a hard line now.
I think what will be embarrassing for him, even if there aren't the numbers in terms of rebellion, Oscar, is if you do have Labour MP after Labour MP standing up in the Commons, giving emotive speeches, really sort of casting negative light on then brand new Prime Minister. I suppose the question is, this wasn't in the manifesto. Was it pre-planned? Was it, though? I mean, there's some suggestion in the Express today, it's the front there, they're quoting Andrew Rosendale, who's a veteran Tory MP. He's sure that this cruel decision, as he's describing it, was always in the planning.
Well, I think Starmer, it's really interesting, takes a lot of his strategic advice from Tony Blair. And it was only, I think, last week Tony Blair was saying that leadership is often about making those really tough, unpopular decisions. And that's why I say that I think Starmer he won't be concerned by the, the negative PR around this decision. I think he kind of wants to lean into it. I think he sees it as, we're not some soft, unprofessional, unserious Labour Party anymore. I think he kind of likes that the fact that people see him as being pretty austere and tough on this. I think he's leaning into it, but we will see. I mean, you hear call after call and, you know, emails into shows like this of people who are saying, I'm not one of those millionaires. I'm probably about 100 quid over the threshold, and this is genuinely going to affect me in a really, really disastrous way.
It's just not just pensioners, is it? I mean, it's also, Nikki, the TUC this week are also saying this is the wrong decision. We know 5,000 pensioners died of cold last winter. How many more are going to suffer this year because of this?
Well, exactly. And then this whole means testing element to it, you know, the idea that, oh, people are being told, oh, it'll be so easy for you to apply and get it. We've got to be honest, lots of older people can't use technology, and I'm presuming this is going to be done through a portal on, you know, government gateway or whatever. And again, it's like just that creates a barrier to entry to claiming it, and that's deliberate, I believe, because that'll stop as many people taking the money up anyway.
Out of interest, I did download the form. You can download the form.
Oh, you can download it.
Who's in her mid-80s. It's 245 questions.
Oh, my goodness,
my mum
exactly.
My mum literally lost the will to live after the first, like, what's your name and what's your address?
Well, completely, and it's all designed to be like that. And it's funny because you just don't expect Labour to come up with this kind of policy.
We could talk about it for half an hour, but if we want to go through some of the other papers. Nikki, you've got this story. Lord Darcy's releasing another report that's out. I say another report, not by him, but there's more reports out today. This is on the state of the NHS. He's been sort of having a deep dive over the summer, and he says progress is going backwards. So, in other words, it's regressing.
Yes, I mean, the headline, NHS in decline for the first time in 50 years. Well, I mean, that's not a surprise to anyone, is it, really? But this is actually a report that Wes Streeting commissioned hours after being elected. And this report is all to do with kind of taking a reading of the NHS post-Tory government. And it's sort of saying things like, you know, there's some really terrible things that are happening. Heart patients are more likely to, you know, appear with severe heart problems sooner. They're getting seen less quickly. I used to work for the heart surgeons at the Royal Brompton, so I know a little bit about this kind of stuff. But it's very, very disturbing, the numbers of people that are presenting with such serious problems down the line. And then also the numbers of children waiting in A&E when they're extremely sick, waiting in corridors. You know, it's just...
Babies and up to 2-year-olds, the numbers waiting have increased 60% since 2009.
It is so worrying.
But there are criticisms that this report's far from impartial. This is, of course, he is an independent peer, but he is somebody who served under Gordon Brown as the health minister.
And there's a very deliberate political agenda here. It's to say this is what the Tories did to the NHS, and then this is how we're going to correct it. Like, we know what it's about.
Which will be tax rises. It's just a pitch roll for tax rises.
Yeah, but also everyone forgets. You know, look at the NHS in Wales, the state that's in. That's been under Labour. I don't think
and in Scotland, not doing too well. What about the other NHS story today? The deadly link, the Mirror front page today. Oscar, this is yours. This is the Lucy Letby inquiry.
Well, interestingly, we were talking in the green room, and actually we were having a quick discussion about it because it has really caught the imagination. Is probably not the best term in the world, but it has. And we were talking in the green room, and I think you actually wanted to talk to this because...
Yeah, well, I did, only because, you know, as a parent with a little baby, this trial, this whole case was happening while I was pregnant and about to give birth in a hospital, and it's just, this is the kind of stuff of nightmares, isn't it? If you are in that situation. But what's really interesting is, so this is tied to the Thirlwell inquiry, which is an inquiry into what went wrong at the hospital where Lucy Letby worked, and they're sort of saying that one of the things that they should have been more on top of was looking at the patterns of past medical serial killers, and that should be some kind of information that is fed into NHS training.
Harold Shipman.
Like Harold Shipman, exactly. And it's actually a fair point thinking about that, because I suppose we imagine that it's the police that deal with that kind of map-making, so to speak, of what drives or motivates someone, but what they find has to be fed down into the places where these things happen, right? So it's going to be really interesting to see what comes out of that inquiry about, were there other people that thought maybe there is something nefarious going on here? I mean, there's just so... It sounded like there were just so many failings, but it'll be interesting to get the actual results.
Sorry for the poor parents that lost.
It's just so terrible.
I mean, to be reliving it all again with this, it just must be awful.
So do you have I know it's interesting what your viewers think about it. So what would your stances be on the kind of Free Lucy Letby campaign?
Oh, yeah.
How that's going? Because a lot of people are saying, and I think Wes Streeting was probably right, actually, he used the word, it's incredibly crass.
There's something very odd about that psychologically, isn't there? Is it that some people just cannot believe that some people just do evil? I think that's the only way of putting it. So then they get behind...
Well, I suppose
there's this phenomenon of people...
question a verdict, and it's not just one. There's been
that's
couple,
true.
Then legitimately people question an outcome, but I think you just have to have faith in the rule of law and the whole
due
process. That's what I'm doing.
And it's important to say that these people...
I'm happy to be proved wrong if it's some extraordinary evidence,
appears.
Exonerates her. But at the moment, as you say, Dawn, my heart just goes out to those families who've already gone through.
They're just having to relive it.
Parent should ever have to go through, whoever was responsible for that, and then to have this going through the papers again, just awful. Doesn't bear thinking about.
Nikki, the other big talker amongst viewers certainly is the Times front page. Crime agency tasked with tackling criminal gangs is on its knees.
Yes, actually, I think Oscar wanted to speak about this. We had a little spot round. Sorry, we should have told you.
Feel free to carry on.
No, it was funny because in the green room I was saying, like, for I feel like every week when I come on, I've kind of said the whole smash the gangs thing is just a complete and utter kind of catchphrase, political slogan with zero depth to it whatsoever. And I think it's proving to be the case as we speak. This enforcement agency that are tasked with smashing the gangs is absolutely on its knees with recruits leaving, brain drain, and then, of course, if you lose the deterrent of something like Rwanda, and I know Rwanda wasn't perfect, I completely accept that, but if you lose the deterrent and you put basically all your chips in this crime agency that are going to smash the gangs, for such a damning report in the Times today to come out, it's finished before it's even started, in my view.
Yeah, I mean, the Tories constantly quoted the National Crime Agency, who said you cannot deal with this problem unless you have an effective deterrent, which they said was Rwanda. Clearly, Germany doesn't think it's a flawed idea.
Well, indeed.
So,
good idea.
Discuss, what the future of that is, but it sounds like the National Crime Agency is not enjoying
Well, they did raid a few
twisted...
nail bars and a few car washes, to be fair.
The low-hanging fruit. The easy ones to go after,
Right, is this one yours now, Oscar? I'm going to talk about the lags being let free. Front of the Sun this morning, probation staff are warning that the mass early release of 2,000 prisoners tomorrow will swamp the service and fuel crime.
So this is a really interesting one. This is something very real that is happening, and it is happening, very, very, very soon. And in politics, and we've talked about it a bit today, there's reports and a quango over here, and, the next Parliament will have a vote on this. It won't be enacted until 2020, wherever. This is happening very, very soon, and it is a huge, I think it's the real story that the Sun have led with on the front page of today. This is a huge political gamble, because whilst it's not the most serious offenders, crime is a perception thing. Like antisocial behaviour, smashing a window here. Yes, I know it's not the worst crime in the world, but when people see and feel that in their communities, it's not felt like that. It still feels really damaging and serious to a community.
Well, just wait until something terrible happens.
Exactly. And then every journalist will be, trying to connect those dots, and they'll easily find out this was someone who was part of this early release scheme from the Labour Party.
But let's be honest, but the reason they're having to do this is because of the mess the Tories made of the prison service. Because, 14 years of mismanaging it, overcrowding it, not thinking about rehabilitation of prisoners and criminals, which is so hard to do anyway. These people that are coming out, they're coming out with kind of no support, no system to keep them on the right track, and it's luck of the draw who does and who doesn't stay away from more crime.
A lot of those coming out, though, have charges for domestic violence.
Yes, they do, and it's extremely worrying, Dawn. Like, as a woman, as anyone who's vulnerable to that, it feels like the Labour Party is saying, we don't really care about your safety.
But there does have to be a debate, probably not at this point as we're releasing prisoners back into the wild, as it were, but there has to be a debate about why, as a Western country, we imprison so many more people than any of our equivalent, counterparts, and how do we reduce the number of people that we put in prison and focus more on rehabilitation, because we know that those who go into prison come out and re-offend.
And even the process starts with how we bring up young people and children, and we're not focusing enough on that. We've taken all the youth clubs away. We've taken so many resources away that supported them to do the right thing. So
we are where we are. Estonia has been suggested. They've got empty prison cells.
Yeah, well, it's interesting. I mean, thinking creatively when it came to Rwanda by the Labour Party was criticised so much, and in some ways there are similarities in terms of thinking outside the box with that policy. In fairness, and it's very easy to cart from the sidelines, I actually don't know what the solution is, but I just know politically when inevitably one of these 2,000 commits, you know, a really horrible crime in a community.
Yeah, it really come back to bite them.
Damaging stuff.
Yeah.
All right, Oscar and Nikki, we say thanks for the first pay-per-view this morning. Looking forward to the next one with both of them a little bit later on. But for now, we say good morning to Craig Schnell, who is here this morning with your weather forecast.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good morning, welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast from the Met Office. Well, today for most of us it's certainly going to be a bit of a drier and brighter one compared to the weekend, but there's still plenty of cloud around first thing this morning across many central and eastern parts. Sunshine further west, and that will gradually push its way a little bit further eastwards as the day goes on. So by the afternoon I think many central areas beginning to brighten up, but always the best of the sunshine further west. But then later on in the day we will start to see this next area of cloud and rain spreading across the far west of Scotland and Northern Ireland. A fresher feeling day for all of us. We could just still see highs reaching the high teens across the south. So as we end Monday afternoon, we start to see this area of rain moving across many western parts of Scotland. Eastern Scotland hanging on to some drier and brighter weather here. That rain also arriving into Northern Ireland. But for many parts of England and Wales, it should be a fairly dry end to the day, although we may still just hang on to the cloud and some outbreaks of rain across the very far east of England. So if we move into the evening and overnight period, this area of cloud and rain will slowly spread its way southeastwards. But for many southern areas, we probably will remain dry with the best of the clear skies, and winds also beginning to increase across the far north, giving a very blustery end to the night. And for most of us, a cooler night, but for most towns and cities, we will hold up into double figures. So Tuesday morning we start off with some sunshine across the southeast, but this area of cloud and rain will continue to track its way southwards. Behind it, much colder conditions, a strengthening wind, and that will bring in a fairly frequent amount of blustery showers, and some of these showers will be quite heavy and thundery. By the end of the afternoon, that cloud and rain will arrive into the far south, but hanging on to something a little bit warmer here, but as I mentioned, further north, pretty cold for the time of year.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News. The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. Trains have been stopped between Edinburgh Park and Airdrie because of an incident. Train services are also suspended between Norwich and Lowestoft because of overrunning engineering works, with trains on the Great Yarmouth branch that usually run via Reedham, diverting via Acle. In the West Midlands, the High Street at Quarry Bank is closed after an accident. Trains have been stopped between Rumney and Bargoed, where overnight engineering works have overrun. The M25 in Essex is blocked by an accident clockwise on the QE2 bridge, with queues from junction 30 for the A13. On the M26 in Kent, it's taking over half an hour in queues approaching the M25, partly because of roadworks, not helped by an accident earlier. In Hampshire, the Hythe Ferry suspended for safety reasons, and there are delays of up to half an hour with some cancelled trains between Exeter, St David's and Honiton because of a signalling problem. And that's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
Mark Dolan tonight is your weekend dose of news, debate and entertainment.
This sounds like a wild conspiracy theory.
Don't miss My Big Opinion. Mark Meets at My Take at 10.
Democracy is a funny old thing.
And we don't do boring, not on my watch. I just won't have it.
Let's go and get another glass of that bubbly. You've earned it.
That's Mark Dolan tonight, Saturday and Sunday, 9 to 11, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
There's an incredible £36,000 to be won in the Great British Giveaway. That's like having an extra £3,000 each month to play with. And because it's totally tax-free, you get to keep every penny and spend it however you like. We could be paying for your entire year until 2025. How amazing would that be? For another chance to win £36,000 in tax-free cash, text CASH to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or text BONUS to 6...
Good morning. Hope you're having a lovely morning out there. Winter fuel vote rebellion.
Yes, rebel Labour MPs could refuse to vote with the government on their planned cut.
Health Secretary Wes Streeting hits out and says he is not happy with the decision but insists it is necessary.
This comes as tensions rise at the TUC Congress, with union leaders slamming Starmer's decision and questioning rising about the PM facing flashpoints with the unions.
Backing Badenoch, 1/3 of the shadow cabinet backs Kemi for Tory leadership, saying she has the X factor and can cut through for voters.
The US Secretary of State Antony Blinken will arrive in the UK today to begin a 2-day visit covering Ukraine and Middle East talks.
And we'll be joined by the former Chancellor, Nadim Zahawi, to tell us about his journey from a child refugee to holding one of the highest offices in Westminster.
And as a secondary school is criticised for allegedly degrading girls after pupils were made to line up and have their skirts measured, I have that at school. We're asking, have school uniform standards slipped?
Always below the knee here. Jannik Sinner becomes the first Italian to win the US Open. Yes, thank you, Dawn. Scotland concede late again last night to Cristiano Ronaldo's 901st career goal. And in cricket, bad baseball batting leaves England staring down the barrel. Is there too many Bs? Well, that's what people are saying about England's batting anyway. They play Sri Lanka and that continues today.
Good morning. It has been a very wet weekend for some of us. What does the weather have in store over the next couple of days? Find out with me coming up in a little bit.
It's just after 7 o'clock. I'm Isabel Webster.
And I'm Dawn Neeson, and this is GB News Breakfast.
Thank you very much for all of you taking the time to get involved this morning on GB News Your Say. Lots of you with your thoughts on the winter fuel allowance cuts that are expected. Sean saying, taking away my winter fuel allowance is disgusting. Ken says, winter fuel allowance, remember milk snatcher Thatcher? Well, after the first winter cold snap, it will probably be Granny Killer Keir. And this is the concern that lots of people will simply not be able to afford to heat their homes this winter.
And this is the thing that's really, really getting to people out there, isn't it? And Ollie echoing a lot of thoughts as well, saying if MPs are not happy, then they should show some backbone and vote no, not a cowardly abstain.
Well, let's get into all of this, shall we, this morning. The Health Secretary has aired his opinion. He said he's not remotely happy about having a vote to take money away from pensioners through cuts to the winter fuel allowance.
But the Health Secretary has conceded that the controversial policy will have a negative impact on his constituents, but has insisted it's a necessary move.
Well, MPs will vote tomorrow on the plans to scrap winter fuel payments for pensioners who do not qualify for pension credit.
This comes as the Tory leadership race continues, where Kemi Badenoch has the backing of more than a third of the shadow cabinet.
The Shadow Defence Secretary and the Shadow Business Secretary believe that Badenoch has the X factor that could propel the Tories back into power. Do you agree? Perhaps let us know your thoughts on that this morning. But first of all, let's get the thoughts of our political correspondent, Olivia Utley, standing by for us in Downing Street. Good morning to you, Olivia. Look, lots of suggestions that perhaps this was planned all along before the election, even though it wasn't in the manifesto. And Wes Streeting saying, well, he's not at all happy about it, but he will vote for it tomorrow, won't he?
Wes Streeting is going to vote for the policy tomorrow. He said that he's not happy and that it won't be good for his constituents, but he suggested that this is the government's only option given that alleged £22 billion black hole that the Conservatives left Labour. There were about 50 MPs who are reportedly struggling to vote for the policy tomorrow. About 30 of them are likely to not vote with the government, but it's thought the majority of those 30 are likely to abstain rather than actually vote against the government. Keir Starmer has said, and he's done this before, he's set a precedent for this with the child benefit vote. He said that he will remove the whip from those who vote against the policy tomorrow. And that's quite complicated for Labour MPs because the House of Lords, there are various peers who are trying to put pressure on Labour MPs to vote against this policy because the Lords want to vote it down. Baroness Altman, who's a former Conservative work and pension Pensions Minister, has tabled a fatal motion, as it's known, to kill off this policy entirely in the House of Lords. Now, she's trying to persuade MPs to vote against the bill, because if they do vote against the bill, then it will sort of empower the Lords to feel that they are able to vote down this policy on Wednesday. I mean, this is all quite theoretical at the moment. Of course, Labour has an enormous majority, almost as big as Tony Blair's back in 1997, and it is assumed that this will sail through the House of Commons, even if it does get into a bit of difficulty in the House of Lords. It is awkward for Keir Starmer, though, because there are a lot of really fundamental concerns about the ethics of this policy among Labour MPs, and he doesn't really want to be in a position where he is suspending the Labour whip from MPs this early in his parliamentary term.
It's not just the Labour MPs, though, set to rebel, is it? It's the House of Lords, as you've already mentioned, but also the TUC saying it's wrong.
Well, absolutely. I mean, this policy is deeply, deeply unpopular, as Wes Streeting, the Health Secretary, has already shown. The line from most Labour MPs on this is that they really don't like the policy at all, but they have no choice. They say that they're really angry with the Conservative government for leaving them in a position where they have to do this. Keir Starmer is actually taking a very slightly different line. Up until now, it has been all about how it is an incredibly unpopular policy, but he feels that he has no choice but to go ahead with it. Today, he's been striking a slightly less conciliatory note, suggesting that pensioners who aren't on pension credits can afford not to have those winter fuel payments, and that might actually get a bit of anger up among various Labour MPs. If their line is that they feel that they have no choice, they want Keir Starmer to be saying the same thing. As you say, I mean, the House of Lords poses a big problem for Keir Starmer with this, but it's likely that we'll get into some sort of parliamentary ping-pong, and at the end of the day, the Labour government, with this enormous majority, is likely to get it over the line. But even so, angering this many Labour backbenchers, this many peers, and of course the unions too, as you mentioned there, isn't great for Keir Starmer so early on in his parliamentary term.
Can we talk about the Conservative Party leadership race that continues this week, doesn't it? And reports out that Kemi Badenoch has the support of a third of the shadow cabinet. She is, of course, the last female left in contention after Priti Patel was knocked out last week. You know, she's reported quite a difficult character and not necessarily the most popular with MPs, even if she is with the membership. Will that stop her, do you think, from getting to the final two? Because obviously I'm thinking of Ken Clarke famously being caught on microphone describing Theresa May as a ... difficult woman. You know, they haven't traditionally always been that popular in the Conservatives.
Well, exactly. Kemi Badenoch is not that popular among some contingents of Conservative MPs because she is seen as a little bit tricky to get on with, sometimes a bit of a ratty character in press conferences. She came second to Robert Jenrick in the first vote among MPs last week, 22 votes to Robert Jenrick's 28. Doesn't sound like very much, but given what a small pool of Conservative MPs we're talking about, just 122 Conservative MPs sitting in the House of Commons at the moment, that is actually quite a big chunk. It was a thought that perhaps in the week between the first vote and the second vote, which is due to take place today, there could be a sort of move against Kemi because, as you say, she is very, very popular with the membership, and it is widely thought that if she makes it onto that final ballot of two, then she will probably win. According to the Conservative Home poll, she's got about twice the support of Robert Jenrick, who is in second place among those Conservative members. So it was thought that perhaps there might be a sort of move from MPs to try and stop her getting to that final ballot. But the fact that she is picking up so much momentum from shadow cabinet ministers, as you say, another two today, James Cartledge and Kevin Hollinrake, is very good news indeed for her. And I think it's quite likely, I don't want to, should be keep my powder dry, but I think it's likely that she does get through this second round of voting today, and that she will probably make it to the final two. And if she does that, as I say, the chances that she wins are pretty high.
Hold you to that, Olivia. Thanks very much indeed.
You know what's really annoying me this morning, Isabel? It's a Monday morning, I'm allowed to be annoyed. Yeah, describing women, right, you always get ratty, spiky, difficult. For man's being opinionated and sort of like strong.
He's robust.
He's robust, yes.
Effective.
Yes, exactly. What
Strong
is the
leader.
difference?
I don't know.
I wonder.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, I just want to read this one out. This is a nice one. This is from Dee. Good morning to you, Isabel and Dawn. Lovely to see you both together this morning.
Well, we have known each other for a gazillion years.
Exactly,
so it's lovely to be at the helm together. I'm very much
nice.
enjoying your company.
And we're not being ratty, spiky or
not
difficult.
Not at all. You're not yet. Give us a chance. Now, listen, we're going to stick with politics. Excitement is building because we have the first presidential debate over the pond between Donald Trump and Kamala Harris taking place tomorrow.
Harris, the Vice President, and former President Trump last week drew the battle lines on the issue US voters say matters most, and that's the economy.
Well, whilst Trump has promised to cut taxes and government spending, Harris has said she'll increase taxes for the wealthy alongside help for smaller businesses.
Right, OK, joining us down the line to discuss the race to the White House, which is complicated to say the least, is political commentator Laurie Laird. Laurie, thank you very much for joining us this morning.
It's a ratty, spiky race over there, isn't it?
Well, she's getting a lot of that, actually, to be fair. You know, I think Donald Trump has been quite outspoken in his opinions on her, which have been a little bit misogynistic, haven't they?
Without a doubt. I think Donald Trump struggles to deal with women, doesn't he? And a black woman on top of that. And I think one of the things that will be very detrimental to Trump, I think something that people will remember, is when he questioned whether Kamala Harris was black or not. You remember those comments a couple of months ago where he said, you know, she had always played the Indian card. She only became black a few years ago. Probably not the wisest comments. But that said, you know, we have seen so much of Kamala Harris since she acceded to the top of the Democratic Party. Lots of very positive press conferences, coverage, almost spawning. Yet she hasn't had a post. We're looking at her at the convention. She hasn't had a post-convention bounce. She had a bounce when she first took over at the top of the party. Nothing post-convention. The two candidates are tied nationwide. So I'd say that all of this positive coverage and Donald Trump's sort of increasingly coherent ranting hasn't really helped Kamala Harris. This is still a very, very tight race.
The other big issue between our special relationship is US Secretary of State Antony Blinken is travelling to London for meetings with Foreign Secretary David Lammy. How do you think that one's going to go, Laurie?
I think this will be presented, even if there are crosswords behind closed doors, particularly over the UK's decision not to send arms to Israel. I think Blinken will understand this, and part of the Democratic Party in the US would side with Lammy, would prefer to see the US stop arming Israel. So I don't think that I think there'll be frank discussions about that, but I don't think it will get in the way of any sort of, I don't think there'll be any strife that is visible. I think that the press conferences will be very positive, affirming that special relationship. And of course, Keir Starmer's going to Washington later in the week. And I think we'll see a lot of preparation for that meeting, but I think prepare yourself for all sorts of kind words.
Yes, and in fact, Antony Blinken will be meeting the Prime Minister here in London, I think, as well, right. As the Foreign Secretary. I suppose Ukraine's going to be on the agenda, another huge concern for this government, and lots of pressure to continue the hugely expensive support that we've been providing, and of course America has as well.
But I think that will be not contentious, but that will be one of the UK's concern, Europe's concern, that America, if Donald Trump is reelected, and there's every chance that Republicans will take, we talk a lot about the presidential race in the U.S., but we've got to talk at some point about the down ticket races, the Senate and the House of Representatives. Both of those at the moment look like they could go to the Republican Party. At the moment, Democrats hold the Senate, Republicans hold the House. Republicans could take both of those, and that could mean real difficulty getting U.S. funding to Ukraine. And I think that's a big concern in the UK and also in Europe.
Obviously, the other issue going on at the moment is the Middle East, and obviously David Lammy has suspended some arms deals with Israel over the Gaza situation. How has that played out in America?
It hasn't got a whole lot of attention, but remember, international news doesn't play in the U.S. the way international news does in the UK or in Europe. I'm constantly surprised at how much of a global outlook your average Brit has compared to your average American hasn't got a lot of press at all. And I do think Lincoln will be sympathetic to the decision, to the UK decision to not arm Israel. Again, there's a significant wing of the Democratic Party in the US that would love to do exactly the same thing, but there's the discipline in the Democratic Party is holding, at least right now, because they have united to beat Donald Trump. What happens if after the election is a very different story, but a lot of the Democratic Party would love to do exactly the same thing, but they're keeping quiet. They want to keep that discipline going into the election.
Laurie, just a final word about this debate tomorrow night. How do you think Kamala Harris will do in her first one? Of course, the last one between Biden and Trump was effectively her, her boss's undoing, wasn't it? And Trump didn't have to do much. I mean, he just kind of unravelled himself. Obviously, Kamala Harris is a totally different kettle of fish, much younger, a prosecutor. Do you think that she will do well in this environment, or do you think, that this actually could be an unravelling for Donald Trump?
I think that she will do well. She does, as you say, she has those prosecutor's instincts. And when she ran for president in the 2020 election, she didn't even make it to 2020. But one of the things she did do very well was debate. She took on Mike Pence in the vice presidential debate and really demolished is too strong a word, but she really held her own. She managed to say, excuse me, Mr. Vice President, I'm speaking, don't speak over me. And she did that in a way that was actually rather charming. It wasn't combative. So I think this is a good forum for her skills. On the other hand, the Democrats really wanted the mics to be unmuted. They wanted to give Donald Trump every opportunity to overspeak, to hang himself to a certain extent. The mics will be muted, and that's something that helped Donald Trump a great deal. So after each candidate gives their answer, they have a certain period of time, then the mics are muted. I think that will help Donald Trump. It certainly helped him on June 27th when he debated Joe Biden. I think that will help him again. It'll impose discipline that he may not have.
Laurie Laird, thank you very much for bringing us up to date on American politics. Thank you very much.
Right, it is 7:16. Let's take a look at some of the other stories coming into the GB News newsroom this morning.
Actor Idris Elba will join the Prime Minister in Downing Street this morning to launch a new effort to tackle knife crime. He's highlighting a coalition which will aim to bring together campaign groups, families of people who've lost their lives to knife crime, and young people who've been affected by it. Ministers have already taken steps to ban so-called ninja swords and plan to strengthen the laws around online sales of knives.
D-Day veteran Donald Shepard, who helped to liberate the Bergen-Belsen concentration camp, has died at the age of 104. A dispatch rider for the Royal Engineers, he landed on Juno Beach on June 6, 1944, in a ship tank. That's part of D-Day. And the British Normandy Memorial account posted on X, "We are saddened to hear of the death of 104-year-old D-Day veteran Donald Shepard. Thinking of his wife, Sandra, and family. Rest in peace, Don."
Aww. And the Army will mark the accession of King Charles today with a 41-gun salute in Green Park and his 62-gun Royal Salute at the Tower of London. While the anniversary of him taking the throne actually fell yesterday, salutes do not take place on Sunday. The King spent the day privately with a trip to church on what was the second anniversary of his mother's death.
Let's take a look at the forecast, shall we? It was all over the place yesterday. I don't know about you.
Yeah, it was, yeah. We had 4 seasons in one day, didn't we, literally?
In one day. Will it be more of the same? Here's Craig Snell with your forecast.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good morning, welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast from the Met Office. Well, today, for most of us, it's certainly going to be a bit of a drier and brighter one compared to the weekend, but there's still plenty of cloud around first thing this morning across many central and eastern parts. Sunshine further west, and that will gradually push its way a little bit further eastwards as the day goes on. So by the afternoon, I think many central areas beginning to brighten up, but always the best of the sunshine further west. But then later on in the day, we will start to see this next area of cloud and rain spreading across the far west of Scotland and Northern Ireland. A fresher feeling day for all of us. We could just still see highs reaching the high teens across the south. So as we end Monday afternoon, we start to see this area of rain moving across many western parts of Scotland. Eastern Scotland hanging on to some drier and brighter weather here. That rain also arriving into Northern Ireland. But for many parts of England and Wales, it should be a fairly dry end to the day, although we may still just hang on to the cloud and some outbreaks of rain across the very far east of England. So if we move into the evening and overnight period, this area of cloud and rain will slowly spread its way southeastwards. But for many southern areas, we probably will remain dry with the best of the clear skies, and winds also beginning to increase across the far north, giving a very blustery end to the night. And for most of us, a cooler night, but for most towns and cities, we will hold up into double figures. So Tuesday morning, we start off with some sunshine across the southeast, but this area of cloud and rain will continue to track its way southwards. Behind it, much colder conditions, a strengthening wind, and that will bring in a fairly frequent amount of blustery showers, and some of these showers will be quite heavy and thundery. By the end of the afternoon, that cloud and rain will arrive into the far south, but hanging on to something a little bit warmer here, but as I mentioned, further north, pretty cold for the time of year.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
It's time now for
the Great British Giveaway to escape some of that weather. Wasn't it great, was it? And it's the biggest cash prize we've ever given away. £36,000 could be yours.
Yeah, £3,000 tax-free in your bank account every month. Not too shabby. What would you do with that if you could have a little bit of extra money to play with? Let us know. But don't just dream about it. Here's all the details of how it could be yours.
This is your chance.
Second to tell you all about my show, Jubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria Di Piero, bringing you
PMQ's live here on GB News.
Whenever Parliament is in session on a Wednesday at midday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions. We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQ's live here on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, though.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry, Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Right, parents have criticised a school for degrading, is their description, girls after dozens of pupils were made to line up and have their skirts measured for about 2 hours, I think, apparently.
That does sound very degrading, to be honest with you. Teachers at school on the Isle of Wight are said to have spent 2 hours, 2 hours, measuring the skirts of 70 female pupils to enforce their new uniform policy.
Well, some girls were then sent home after their skirts were deemed too short.
So we're asking if schools are right to enforce stricter uniform policies and whether the standards from some pupils have dropped.
Well, let's debate this morning with the former UKIP leader Neil Hamilton, who believes standards have indeed dropped, and the head teacher, Christine Cunniff, who believes they haven't. Well, let's start with you, Christine, then, because it's pretty hard to justify, isn't it, not only the word degrading being used of these girls, but 2 hours of valuable teaching time on something as petty as the length of a pupil's skirt, surely?
Well, I think 2 hours is a waste of time. I would have just sent them home in the first instance. If you can't come to school properly dressed, and that's what parents and children sign up for, then don't be part of the school. You know, there have to be standards. And things haven't dropped, because I remember coming to this school that I'm in now 21 years ago, and the senior mistress then at the time used to make the girls kneel on the floor and measure the gap between the floor and the knee. I've been in education 30 years. It's no different, but you sign up for the rules, get on with it, and let's get back in the classroom and start learning.
Neil?
Well, I can't speak for any individual school, of course, but in the case of Ride Academy, I looked up their shop website this morning. Virtually all sizes of skirts are available, and I can't understand, therefore, why parents can't get their kids kitted out properly for the beginning of term. After all, this was, I think, the first day back at school, and if 70 girls have skirts which are deemed possibly too short, I don't see anything wrong with measuring the length of a skirt. I mean, what's degrading about that? Seems absolutely ridiculous to me. But you see kids out and about, maybe 12, 13, 14 years old. They look as though they're planning a career on OnlyFans, frankly. And I think that, young people, I don't want to be prudish about things, but I think that young people do have to get some sense of esprit de corps and decorum. If schools set a standard for everybody, then everybody's got to keep to it.
Christine, I mean, you say, standards haven't dropped because this has been going on for a long, long time. So the message clearly isn't getting across, is it? But why aren't parents taking more responsibility for how they send their children to school?
Well, I think we're seeing more and more of this, aren't we, with, teachers having to brush children's teeth and things like that. It's not down to teachers to have to reinforce these rules. Parents should make sure that go out the house looking good. But, and I bet you there's no one on this screen who could deny that as soon as the doors shut and you're on that school bus, things change. And I can tell by your expressions that it probably did. So, where does policing start and where does it stop? By teachers.
Yeah, there was a story when I was walking home from the station as a schoolgirl, and I had my skirt rolled up, I'm not ashamed to admit, and my skirt was actually completely hidden by my school blazer. But my dad had got home from work early that day and was walking down the hill, seeing a girl from my school and thinking, gosh, what a sort of girl. I can't believe she goes to my daughter's school. She's not got a skirt on. And then he saw her turn into our road. Then he saw her turn into our house. I was in so much trouble. But I tell you, I rolled my skirt up, not because I had any thoughts about it being sexual or, the reference to OnlyFans there. These girls are so young and innocent. I actually think it's just about being cool and trying to sort of outdo each other, almost a bit of a rebellion against authorities. But, Neil, aren't we living in an era now in 2024 where everybody's being told, the young are being told you can be anything you want, you can identify as anything you want? Aren't actually school uniforms a bit outdated now?
I don't think so at all. I mean, the great thing about school uniforms is that they're illusional. You've got all ranges of economic circumstances in families today, and I think for people on lower incomes, having school uniforms makes it easier for their kids to fit in, and therefore less able to be stigmatised on grounds of their home conditions. So I think it's actually not just an equaliser, but actually an empowerer for people on lower incomes. And you can buy school kit second-hand at school shops usually, and there should be no bar, therefore, to everybody being turned out in a reasonably smart way. You can express your individuality out of school. You don't have to be able to express it through clothes in school, because everybody needs to look broadly the same. And everybody should be proud anyway, I think, to wear a school uniform. If you're going to a school which has ambitions and produces good results, results, or at least has ambitions to produce good results, then smart uniforms, I think, is part of it. And it teaches you life skills that are going to be useful in years after you leave school.
Christine, it is a factor, though, isn't it? I mean, you know, Neil's alluded to the fact that, you know, they're the same price, everyone can afford a school uniform. It's not true. If your school uniform, for example, is wearing a white polo shirt, but, you know, a white polo shirt you can get very cheaply, but if it's got to have the school logo on it, that's very expensive. Lots of families can't afford that sort of thing.
Yeah, and I think a lot of schools are looking at costs, and schools do listen to their parents and their children and what's comfortable for school as well. And you can get polos that are unbranded, and there's been quite a bit of that in the media over the past year. And then you've got schools where everything is branded. It is a big range of prices where you can go down to your local supermarket and get completely stocked out on uniform, and it should be accessible to everyone, because a uniform, it is a measure of pride in your school, pride in you, and then you can just concentrate on getting on with your work, which is why you're there.
Neil Hamilton, Christine Cunniff, thank you both for giving us your take on this issue. Lots of you getting in touch with your views as well this morning. Dawn Envis says, about school uniform skirts, I was a lanky streak of pea, so a skirt on me would be a completely different length to my classmates, which is a fair point, I suppose, especially if you've had a sudden growth spurt, which lots do as they're growing up. Alison says, when I was at school, we used to have a knicker check to make sure we were wearing school regulation pants.
Oh, God, yeah.
And you do start to think, OK, who is actually doing the measuring
Who's
of the
doing the knicker check
for 2
then?
hours? You know, is that a safeguarding issue? I don't know.
But I'm old enough. We used to have our, they had to be regulation school uniform, navy knickers, and your mum had to sew your name tag in your knickers.
Yeah, we had PE knickers. So for sports, we just wore navy blue pants.
Yes.
And then on sports day, we were allowed to wear something that didn't expose you so much. But I remember all of us hating our
Oh,
PE
my God.
knickers.
And those stupid little skirts you had to play hockey in. What was that about? Why? Why couldn't you just wear shorts like boys could?
Oh, dear. Well, the world is changing. Is that a good thing or not? Let us know your memories, your thoughts in all of this. GBnews.com/your say.
Right, OK, well, talking of sport, Paul Coit will be here.
Not in a short skirt or PE
well,
knickers.
he might possibly be in a skirt. I mean, often he does, but we're not giving anything away there. This is GB News Breakfast with Dolan and Isabel. We'll see you soon.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. Buses replaced trains between Bathgate and Airdrie because of an incident. Buses also replaced trains between Norwich and Lowestoft, where overnight engineering works have overrun. Trains that run on the Great Yarmouth branch via Reedham, diverting via Acle. In Cambridgeshire, the Longthorpe Parkway in Peterborough is closed off the Mean Parkway because of an oil spill. In the West Midlands, the High Street of Quarry Bank is closed each way for an investigation. Train services are suspended between Rumney and Bargoed because of overrunning engineering works. The M26 in Kent is taking over half an hour in westbound queues approaching the M25 because of roadworks. In West Sussex, the A280 is closed each way off the A24 between Findon and Clapham after an accident. In Hampshire, the Hythe Ferry is suspended because of safety reasons, and train services are suspended between Exeter, St David's and Honiton because of a signalling problem.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Your lunchtime update on the stories that matter across the UK.
From breaking news and insightful analysis, inspiring stories and lively debates. You're comparing yourself to a former Prime Minister.
Which is it? Stay informed, stay updated, stay entertained.
I just don't know how anyone would not want to be there.
Every weekday from midday.
We are Good Afternoon Britain, only on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Tune in to Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan. GB News royalty with your perfect start to the weekend. Lucky us. Feisty and fearless guests.
Well, I'm a normal person, so ask me.
Honest opinions. That raises more questions than a Gary Barlow tax return. And a few surprises along the way. Might be cold in this studio. That is Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan. 8 to 9, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently.
It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it?
It's explosive.
I mean, this is very good.
It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good morning, welcome back. It's time to go through all the latest sports news here with the wonderful Paul Coity. In his school uniform, under the desk, obviously.
I told you the story, didn't I, last week about how upset I was when I went back when I was in the 5th year, so I was nearly 16. And it's still, all these years on, when I was walking along and I was a prefect and the lollipop lady said, you can always tell the new kids, you can always tell the new first years because they've got new uniforms. I'm like, I'm 15, I'm only 16. Still to this day, it drives me crazy.
Obviously triggered you, and it's like...
Stands you in good stead.
I've still got my school uniform. I still have it.
It's you looking young.
Oh, bless you. But I've still got the signed... I've still got the signed shirt and the... yeah. It's still there somewhere. Yeah, I still have it.
I don't know where any of my
I didn't really
stuff
like
is.
school. I don't even know why I kept it.
No, that's interesting.
Yeah.
But you, it doesn't surprise me as a prefect, though.
No.
I was, I'll go, please, go, not out here. And then there's a kid that's 4 years older than me, goes, get out of the way. I'm going, OK, sorry, he's a bigger boy than I am. Right, US Open, Yannick Sinner beat Taylor Fritz of the USA yesterday in the final, and 6-3, 6-4, 7-5, Yannick Sinner, so he wins another Grand Slam. The baton is being handed on now to these young boys. Him and Alcaraz, they're the two best in the world at the moment. And there's Yannick Sinner. He's very slight. He's very slight.
He's a Gucci model, darling.
Is he?
Yeah.
Is he really? Since when?
Since before Wimbledon, because I was sort of researching him before I was going to watch him at Wimbledon, and was very interested to hear. He's done a few campaigns for them, so he's very
Italian as well.
Willowy, but I mean, you're right. When you think of Andy Murray, how he really bulked up and really built up his strength, he's got to world number one, won 2 slams this year, and looks like, sort of willowy model.
Sure, yeah, absolutely.
He's some player. That's the other thing, isn't it? We were watching the game the other day, and you never get tennis players, maybe like that are very big arms. You would imagine that it's the arm that's doing all the work. Do you know what I mean? But they're all very slight.
They do sometimes have a slightly bigger arm on their serving shoulder. But the girl tennis players are often quite a lot bigger, actually.
Yes.
Chunkier,
yeah,
more
they almost
muscular,
need weight to get that serve.
Like Sabalenka, she's hit the fastest forehand top spin than any man has actually hit. So there's a lot of power in there. But anyway, so it's the last one of the season. So Sinner wins. So he's won 2. Alcaraz has won 2. Everybody was there. Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce were there, and John Bon Jovi was there, and Noah Lyles was there. Of course, everybody was going to be there at Flushing Meadow last night. Hard court dominance by Yannick Sinner, and and Jack Draper did very well. Semi-final. I just think it bodes very well for the future because I think, OK, he lost to Sinner, but he would have beaten Fritz, I think.
They're the same age, and they're
great
pals.
Friends.
Yeah, great pals. And obviously, being Italian, Sinner cooks up a mean bowl of pasta.
Does he?
But Dawn has a theory that could be behind the vomiting.
Yes.
Do you think so?
Yes.
Well, you think he was giving that to Jack?
You go back to that infamous game between West Ham and Spurs, where Lasagna Gate, where Spurs got very, very ill. They all had food poisoning.
There was something very dodgy that went on from the other part of North London, maybe. And the thing is, though, that's the embarrassing thing, is that you feel for him because he was actually being sick on the court. Okay. And then there's the he's like, oh, mop it, let me just mop it. I know you don't have to do that. It's like, whoa.
It's very British, I
it is.
Say. And I think
it's very... I agree with that.
I totally agree. Clean up your own sick, especially if the world's cameras are looking at you.
Well, let's face it, we've all done it from time to time, haven't we?
Let's move on. Let's move on.
Portugal beat Scotland 2-1 last night. They did very well. Scotland, for 7 minutes in, they went 1-0 up. Portugal, though, scored twice. Guess who scores at the end?
Ronaldo.
I wonder.
Was Cristiano.
Was he understated as normal?
Understated as normal. 88th minute. Left it there. Probably left it late to do it on purpose, to make such a big fuss. 901 career goals now for Cristiano Ronaldo. So Northern Ireland lost 1-0 to Bulgaria. Wales play Montenegro tonight. And I guess, have we got any time for the Paralympics? Oh, we haven't got time for the Paralympics.
But I tell you, we'll save it.
Oh, my goodness.
We will save
it was
for
amazing.
next hour.
But more to come.
Yeah, thanks, Coity. Appreciate it.
Pleasure.
Still to come, we will be going through today's top stories with Nikki Hodgson and Oscar Redrop in and Making the News. This is a GB News Breakfast with Dawn and Isabel.
I'm Tom Harwood. This is GB News, Britain's news channel. In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
70% of population will make a judgment on someone just by looking at them. And we, within 2-3 seconds, we make a decision if we like someone or not.
Really? Is it that quick?
So it's actually very, very fast. So before we have a chance to kind of express what we want to say, our subconscious mind is kind of looking for clues. So you look at someone and you look at their, for example, I don't know, the watch they're wearing, maybe the makeup. I spent literally my whole childhood learning, being absolutely mesmerized by my mom's ability to choose different style of clothing for different style personalities. British definitely take a pride in their appearance. They do spend time to look good. There is a lot of amazing British designers. For me, it was always about that feeling that I've learned from my mom's shop, how the people were living, buying certain things. And I was like, oh my God, they look happy. They've got this big smile on their face. My main objective always was to make people feel good. So now as a stylist, I help them to go through style therapy. I help them to discover colours that are good for their colours that they wear them close to their face, but also it sets the tone for their wardrobe. And then we look at the outfit formula. So it's, yeah. When I look at Ellie's dress sense, I was just thinking, OK, she likes to be polished.
I do like to be polished.
Exactly. Elegant. Timeless. I look at the reference to the dress you're wearing today. It's that kind of Chanel black and white, timeless, never go out of fashion. So for me, it's about, it's not the trends, but how you would like your personal style to be and how timeless it can be.
GB News, the People's Channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
I'm Emily Carver. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Right, let's take a look at the newspaper front pages, shall we? And start with The Guardian, which is leading with reports that up to 50 Labour MPs could refuse to back the controversial plans to cut the winter fuel allowance for pensioners. The vote is tomorrow.
And that story also features on the front page of The Times with the headline, Starmer to give winter fuel rebels short shrift.
Here's the Daily Mail. It's reporting on Labour's own research that found thousands of pensioners could die if the allowance is axed.
And The Telegraph leads with a major report finding that progress in the NHS is going backwards for the first time in 50 years.
The Daily Mirror reports an inquiry into the killer nurse Lucy Letby will look into whether the NHS has failed to learn from the crimes of the serial killers Beverly Allett and Harold Shipman.
Joining us to go through what's making the news is former advisor to Boris Johnson, Oscar Redrup, and that's what we were giggling about when you first came in, because we were talking about that. And author and broadcaster Nikki Hodgson, thank you very much for joining us this morning.
Thank you.
OK, right, who wants to start first on this one? Should we go Nikki first? Antisocial behaviour.
Yes, well, this is to do with another inquiry. It was a report, actually, by Baroness Newlove, who's coming out and saying that antisocial behaviour is basically not really seen as a crime anymore. It's not tackled properly. People are living for 5 years or more before they kind of have things investigated properly by the police. And the top thing that people are struggling with is noise nuisance. And these things, they sound trivial if they, if somebody recounts to you saying we've got a really noisy neighbour, but when you live somewhere and this happens to you year in, year out, and the police refuse to take it seriously, it can massively affect your quality of life. And of course, it's always a thin end of the wedge, isn't it, antisocial behaviour? If you don't tackle this kind of crime, then things can escalate so easily. Yeah, I mean, it's really disturbing. And it is interesting, actually, that Labour had in their manifesto that this is one of the things as one of their key pledges. They want to tackle antisocial behaviour.
Baroness Newlove, her story is extraordinary, isn't it? Because her husband stood up to people who were being noisy and antisocial outside their house, and then he actually got stabbed and died, which is why she became the Commissioner for Victims, isn't she? But, she's saying that more and more people are living through what she lived through. And I suppose, she's the perfect example. Her husband could take no more. Went out there to try and take matters into his own hands.
Which, look, anybody would. You'd often think if somebody was noisy, you can imagine if there were kids in the street, maybe you go and say something to tell them off. I mean, coming from the north of England, I would always do that. But realistically, in London, I will think twice about doing something like that, because you just don't know if they're armed or anything.
But it is interesting, Oscar, how quickly we've got into this situation where people now are worried about saying anything because you just don't know who's got a knife, whether they're going to use it.
And it entirely links into the Sun's front page story that we were discussing earlier, Nikki, about, the government are going to release, around 2,000 offenders onto the streets, and, that antisocial behaviour, how it's felt in communities. I mean, that's not going to help at all. That's going to be, really disconcerting. And that is a policy that is happening now. This isn't something far off.
Well, tomorrow is the deadline when we'll get over 1,000 will be released from
Exactly.
prison.
And I think political parties, they like to talk about antisocial behaviour because they think it's, it's that kind of thing that links all communities that we can all understand and, be wary of. And they do very, very, very little about it once they're in power. I remember Keir Starmer and the Labour Party talking about it constantly during the election. And so it'll be interesting to see what this report fuels.
If anything. Nikki, let's talk about Send in the Clowns to Help Children Heal, which is on the front of the Times. What's this about?
Well, I did think it was an April Fool, but it is completely the wrong time of year. But it's actually a very serious story about some medical research that's been done in Israel that shows that if you send in clowns to hospitals where children have pneumonia, they recover more quickly.
Have you not seen it?
That's where my brain goes as well, Dawn, when I think of a clown. It would terrify me. I don't think they're necessarily dressed as traditional clowns. I don't know. We haven't got pictures of them.
I need to understand the story more. Surely I need to understand the controls. I mean, is it just like visitors to children helps them, or distracting children perhaps with some of the...
It's a combination. They're called medical clowns. So they have some training. They have some therapeutic training. I know it sounds absolutely bewildering, but they have some therapeutic training. They're there to distract and to help.
That's the point.
Yeah, help
they just
make them feel better.
Tell jokes or juggle balls or turn up with a red nose or what?
Wow, well, I need to understand the story better. Are we all right with Oscar's mic? I know there was some question about that. Are we able to... OK, we'll persevere. OK, well, let's talk about the front of the Telegraph then, Oscar, which is Kemi Badenoch getting support of at least a third of the shadow cabinet.
Yeah, this is, I think, quite important for Kemi. I think with the first round of voting, Rob Jenrick was out in front. Kemi had quite a quiet campaign, kind of keeping slightly below the radar. So this will be a real boost to her. They probably did a bit of calculation and realised that this was going to come, so they've timed it quite nicely just after that first round of vote. I think, actually, the X-Factor expression, that she is the candidate with that X-Factor, I think is fair. I think the best of Kemi, that best 10% of her, she does have something that I don't think a lot of the other candidates have. I think the real battle, though, in terms of kind of consistency and calmness that doesn't always come from Kemi necessarily, we'll see Rob I think probably maybe be that main rival as someone who maybe doesn't have that, you know, X-Factory spark, always looking for a fight and, you know, that kind of cut through.
But, Nikki, we've had a Prime Minister with X-Factor, haven't we? I mean,
and it didn't work.
Really well.
And we've had yeah, we've seen, you know, the Tory party has often selected people for the so-called X-Factor over substance or even just statesmanship. And I think the interesting thing about Kemi Badenoch is this obsession with woke is all she ever kind of goes on about. And she's trying to move now in her comms to talking about let's move back to Tory values. And I just don't buy it because I just think it's too little too late. I think it's quite obvious that she's quite ideological and I think that will make her divisive for the membership. And so it's whether, you know, isn't it just easier to have a safe pair of hands after all the problems they've had with so many prime ministers, you know, when they were in power?
Yeah, talking of woke, should we move on to the Mail? Oscar, this is your story. The BBC showing extreme bias.
Yeah, well, look, I mean, so the BBC have shown over 1,500 times during the coverage of the Israel-Hamas war breached its editorial guidelines. And that bias, I think, I'm surprised isn't a bigger story in a way. It's probably, you know, internationally, maybe even domestically as well, probably the biggest news story we've had over the last year or so. And for the BBC, which is something that, you know, I don't want to bash it too much. There's a lot to be proud of, you know, in terms of the BBC, and it does some really, really good stuff. But this is an absolute failing on probably the biggest, as I said, kind of international news story that they could have covered.
Yeah. This report highlighted their failure to call Hamas a terrorist organisation. BBC Arabic was one of the main offenders. There was a criticism of the use of the word genocide and linking Putin with his actions in Russia to those of Israel, and that was by their internationally critically, I suppose, acclaimed international correspondent Jeremy Bowen. The BBC have come out absolutely so far unapologetically saying that AI have been involved in looking through this for the Assassin report, and actually it misses out on a lot of nuance, and they defend their position on how they have described Hamas. You know, it isn't a black and white issue.
No, of course it isn't, and it's hugely contentious, and it's, as we all know, it's a hugely emotive subject. But it was really frustrating because you were watching pretty much all other broadcasters, you know, quite comfortable in describing Hamas as a terrorist organisation. And it was really frustrating as someone who actually does care about the BBC. I do rate the BBC. It was so frustrating watching them just not feeling empowered or not wanting to.
Right, and it felt that they were trying to, you know, kind of sit on the sidelines more, even though the reporting ended up being more biased. It felt like they were being cowardly.
For me, just, you know, given that we work here at GB News and we're under sort of a lot of scrutiny from regulators, debatable, you know, exactly whether or not they are consistent in the way they conduct these investigations, because if this is, you know, to be taken seriously, this Assassin report, surely Ofcom then needs to investigate if that's the way they've treated us.
Absolutely.
Over the years. That's the challenge. That's the gauntlet we laid out for them this morning. Nikki, let's talk about nearly half of doctors globally sexually harassed by patients. Actually, my best friend is a GP. I won't say where, but she has had a stalker who's been one of her patients, burst into her room, following her round to her children's...
Oh, my goodness. This is so disturbing. I mean, the headline is what grabs you with this story because it's not what you expect, right? Yeah, I mean, we've heard over the years of some doctors taking advantage of some patients. But this is saying that actually 45% of doctors globally have experienced sexual harassment, 52.2% of female doctors, and also 34.4% of male doctors, which seems very high. That's not normally the kind of numbers you'd be expecting. And just the kind of like, I mean, I won't read all the things actually because they're a little bit explicit, but the kinds of things that people do are just completely unacceptable.
Yeah. Well, we'll probably talk about that a little bit more in the next. We've got to wrap for now.
Along with the picture on the front page of the Mail that we are going to talk about next time round. But first, let's get the weather with Craig Snell.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good morning. Welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast from the Met Office. Well, today, for most of us, it's certainly going to be a bit of a drier and brighter one compared to the weekend. But there's still plenty of cloud around first thing this morning across many central and eastern parts. Sunshine further west, and that will gradually push its way a little bit further eastwards as the day goes on. So by the afternoon, I think many central areas beginning to brighten up, but always the best of the sunshine further west. But then later on in the day, we will start to see this next area of cloud and rain spreading across the far west of Scotland and Northern Ireland. A fresher feeling day for all of us. We could just still see highs reaching the high teens across the south. So as we end Monday afternoon, we start to see this area of rain moving across many western parts of Scotland. Eastern Scotland hanging on to some drier and brighter weather here. That rain also arriving into Northern Ireland. But for many parts of England and Wales, it should be a fairly dry end to the day, although we may still just hang on to the cloud and some outbreaks of rain across the very far east of England. So if we move into the evening and overnight period, this area of cloud and rain will slowly spread its way southeastwards. But for many southern areas, we probably will remain dry with the best of the clear skies, and winds also beginning to increase across the far north, giving a very blustery end to the night. And for most of us, a cooler night, but for most towns and cities, we will hold up into double figures. So Tuesday morning, we start off with some sunshine across the southeast, but this area of cloud and rain will continue to track its way southwards. Behind it, much colder conditions, a strengthening wind, and that will bring in a fairly frequent amount of blustery showers, and some of these showers will be quite heavy and thundery. By the end of the afternoon, that cloud and rain will arrive into the far south, but hanging on to something a little bit warmer here, but as I mentioned, further north, pretty cold for the time of year.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. On the M60 in Greater Manchester, the outside lanes closed clockwise after an accident between junction 27 for the Portwood roundabout and one at Stockport, causing queues from junction 23 at Ashton-under-Lyne. Buses replaced trains between Norwich and Lowestoft, where overnight engineering works at Reedham have overrun. Trains on the Great Yarmouth branch that run via Reedham diverting via Acle. In Cambridgeshire, the Longthorpe Parkway in Peterborough is closed eastbound off the Neame Parkway after an accident and oil spill. In the West Midlands, the High Street at Quarry Bank is closed each way after an accident. Train services are suspended between Cardiff Queen Street and Rumney, where overnight engineering works have overrun, and there's also a signalling problem. On the M1 in Bedfordshire, two lanes are closed northbound just before junction 13 at Bedford after an accident causing delays. And in West Sussex, the A280 is closed between Findon and Clapham after an accident.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/your say. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
You can be the...
Backing Badenoch, 1/3 of the shadow cabinet backs Kemi to become Tory leader, saying she has the X factor needed to cut through with the voters.
The US Secretary of State Antony Blinken will arrive in the UK today to begin a 2-day visit covering Ukraine and Middle East talks.
And in the next 15 minutes or so, we're going to be joined by the former Chancellor Nadim Zahawi to tell us about his journey from child refugee to top office.
And in sport, Yannick Sinner becomes the first Italian to win the US Open. Scotland concede late again. It was last night, and Cristiano Ronaldo scored his 901st career goal. And also, we'll see what happens when 3 Borussia Dortmund players play against 100 kids.
Good morning. It has been a very wet weekend for some of us. What does the weather have in store over the next couple of days? Find out with me coming up in a little bit.
It's just gone 1 minute past 8 o'clock. I'm Isabel Webster.
And I'm Dawn Newsroom, and this is GB News Breakfast.
Just having a look under the desk to see if your skirt was regulation length, but you're in a trouser suit today.
I tend to wear trousers all the time.
What about mine? I'm in a dress, but it is a few inches above the knee. It might get in
more
trouble.
than a few inches above the knee.
Being the gentleman I am, I'm absolutely not looking under the desk to see how short your skirts
is
are.
Not regulation.
Well, you please keep your eyes to yourself. Thank you very much.
Lots of you actually been getting in touch on this topic. We were debating whether or not it's a bit much in this day and age to be getting girls to kneel on the floor and have their skirts measured. Lots of parents have been describing it as degrading.
Exactly.
Well, Andrea says, yes, school uniform standards have slipped. The girls' skirts are so short, they wear shorts underneath. My school uniform was brown. They used to check that we had brown knickers on, skirt length on the knee, and not a scrap of makeup allowed or nail varnish. It's the same for me, Andrea.
Yeah, the makeup is interesting. I mean, what Ian says, that schools are right to enforce uniform policy. You'll only have to measure skirts initially and then it'll become uniform. Yes, obviously never met a teenage girl, have you?
Michael, this uniform business is over the top. The only thing I would say is some parents should iron their kids' clothes. Oh, interesting.
Right, OK. And Caroline says, every September we get the same debate, either accept the uniform policy and abide by it or leave. It's a question of discipline and respect. And I would say parental responsibility as well.
Yeah, although you as a parent could send your little child out thinking they look immaculate and they go around the corner and roll their skirts up. Don't know anyone who would do that, of course.
No. Well, I mean, your dad got a bit of a shock, didn't he, when he discovered exactly
Many years ago.
Young Isabel was going to school.
Right, let's turn our attention to serious matters now, though. And we're going to talk about this winter fuel payments row. Wes Streeting has now waded in. He said he's not remotely happy about having to vote to take money away from pensioners through cuts to the winter fuel allowance.
Yeah, this is on the front page of pretty much every newspaper today. The Health Secretary has conceded that the controversial policy will have a negative impact on his own constituents, but has insisted it is a necessary move.
Well, MPs will vote tomorrow on the plans to scrap the payments for pensioners who don't qualify for pension credit.
This comes as the Tory leadership race continues, where Kemi Badenoch has the backing of more than a third of the Shadow Cabinet.
The Shadow Defence Secretary and the Shadow Business Secretary believe that she has the X factor that could propel the Tories back into power.
Well, let's be joined now by GB News political correspondent Catherine Forster, who is in Downing Street for us. Catherine, good morning. Yeah, actually in our Westminster studio, so it's close. It's just off of Downing Street, so we were pretty accurate there. So, big week for this winter fuel allowance, which is not going away anytime soon, is it?
No, it really isn't. And Wes Streeting, the Health Secretary, saying he's not remotely happy, joins a long line of Labour MPs, charities, pensioners and others who are deeply unhappy about this move to strip this allowance of £200 or £300 from all but the poorest pensioners. It's a move that's going to save the government £1.4 billion, but my goodness, they are expending a lot of political capital on this. Now, there's up to about 50 Labour MPs who are going to struggle to support it. It's likely that dozens will abstain. They simply won't turn up, or they just will abstain. There may be some who vote against, probably a handful. Now, we saw a previous rebellion over the two-child benefit cap being kept in place. That led to 7 Labour MPs having the whip withdrawn from them. So let's face it, the vote tomorrow, it's not going to make any difference ultimately. This is going to go through. The government have got a huge majority. But I think what it does show is the problems that the Prime Minister and Rachel Reeves, the Chancellor, have with discipline within their own party. And also at the TUC conference today, many of the unions deeply unhappy about this, so a row looming there as well. And a very unfortunate headline on the front page of the Daily Mail today. They've unearthed some research done by Labour back in 2017 when Theresa May, the then Prime Minister, thought about means testing this winter fuel payment, which basically said that up to 4,000 pensioners could die if it was withdrawn. Now the boot is on the other foot, but Sir Keir Starmer saying there's nothing easy about this, but he's prepared to be unpopular, talking, of course, about this £22 billion black hole in the public finances, which they say the Tories have left.
Yeah, a bit of a poll tax moment, really, isn't it, already this early on in the administration? And when you've got your health secretary saying he's not happy about it, I suppose that sort of almost gives licence, does it not, to any MPs who are feeling very uncomfortable about this? Because let's not forget, this was not on the Labour Party manifesto. Many of the brand new MPs who'll be sitting there voting tomorrow night will think, you know, justifiably that this is, you know, a little bit much early on in their role as MP to be asked to support the government on something that wasn't even laid out just 8 weeks ago, whatever it was.
Exactly. It wasn't in the manifesto. So, of course, people that got elected off the back of that, the government can rightly say, look, you were elected on that platform, you need to support it. It's a bit different with this because they didn't know about it and it wasn't floated. So I think it will be the first really big rebellion of this government and a sign of things to come, because, you know, we know that there's not much money around. Now there's £22 billion black hole. We also know that some £9 billion of that was actually created by this government in that it chose to give those above inflation pay awards to public sector workers. So they are making political choices here, and it does seem like, you know, they've chosen to prioritise workers rather than pensioners. Of course, pensioners will say, look, hey, we've worked all our lives and all we ask for now is a bit of support when we need it. Now, of course, the triple lock is in place. The government's saying that the amount that the pension's going up will more than cover it. But there are charities saying they're very worried about hundreds of thousands of pensioners that are not quite badly off enough to get it, but still may feel that they can't put their heating on, and very potentially serious consequences as a result of that.
Catherine, the triple lock on pensions, all it means is that it will drag more and more pensioners into paying tax because of the fiscal drag, because the thresholds are frozen. So it's not really going to make much difference. And a lot of people are pointing out here, pensioners on £11,600 a year are actually helping to pay the expenses of MPs on, well, you know, up to £90,000 a year to pay to heat their houses. It just doesn't sound fair.
It is incredibly difficult, isn't it? And the optics of this, you know, a government's duty first is to keep its most vulnerable safe. Now, elderly people need more heating, don't they, to keep warm? They feel the cold. And it's politically quite horrendous, I think, for the government, the look of this. But the Prime Minister was talking yesterday and he was looking that, look, this didn't work very well. Some of this money is going to millionaire pensioners who don't need this at all. And sure, that's the case. But there's also many pensioners who won't qualify for it, who aren't well off. And of course, the energy price cap is going up again. So bills are getting more expensive again. And, you know, the cost of living is still rising.
Yeah. All right, Catherine, thanks very much.
Thank you.
Let's turn our attention then to the Trades Union Congress, which is resuming in Brighton today. We were just discussing that they are very, very unhappy with this, aren't they?
Everybody's unhappy with it. A number of issues will be on the agenda on day two, including creating a fairer economy and protecting the right to strike. And, of course, the one thing pensioners don't do, Isabel, is go on strike.
Well, joining us down the line from Brighton to discuss what will be happening today is our reporter Adam Cherry. Good morning to you. And things are hotting up. They are piling the pressure on their Prime Minister.
That's right, yes. Yesterday we saw Ellie Reeves was the first government minister to arrive here and deliver a speech to the Trade Union Congress. It's the first full day today, but last night we had a few bits and bobs going on. The language is very interesting because she's very clear in trying to depict the close relationship between the unions and the party, assuring the unions that they are working in partnership with the government over the next few years to deliver things like Angela Rayner's New Deal for working people. But crucially also saying we've disagreed before and we will disagree again. So if you dig into it, you see actually they're aware that there are some bubbling tensions here, and that was also reflected or that will be reflected rather, in the speech by the General Secretary of the TUC, Paul Noack, today. He's expected to say that the unions are going to roll up their sleeves and get stuck in with the government and essentially pressure them into delivering what the unions are after on, as you say, things like a fair deal for working people, care worker pay rises, public sector pay rises. They're not going quietly. I was at a press conference yesterday with the General Secretary where he made a similar point and said he's concerned about things like the winter fuel allowance. And although they're pleased that this is the first TUC Congress in which there's a Labour government for 15 years, that doesn't mean they're going to step back. So again, tensions brewing if you look for it within the language. They're trying to be conciliatory and play ball for now, but tomorrow will be a really big test. Tomorrow we also have the Prime Minister arriving here to deliver his speech. It's on the same day that the MPs back in Westminster will vote on the winter fuel allowance, so I don't think there's any coincidence that he's run away. So brewing tensions, and that will come unfold very shortly.
OK, Adam Cherry, thanks very much indeed from Brighton this morning.
Yes, OK, unusual reception a Labour Prime Minister is going to get from a TUC Congress down there. Not going to be easy, is it?
Might be stormy, but will the weather be? Yes. Here's Craig Snell with your forecast.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good morning, welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast from the Met Office. Well, today for most of us it's certainly going to be a bit of a drier and brighter one compared to the weekend, but there's still plenty of cloud around first thing this morning across many central and eastern parts. Sunshine further west, and that will gradually push its way a little bit further eastwards as the day goes on. So by the afternoon I think many central areas beginning to brighten up, but always the best of the sunshine further west. But then later on in the day we will start to see this next area of cloud and rain spreading across the far west of Scotland and Northern Ireland. A fresher feeling day for all of us. We could just still see highs reaching the high teens across the south. So as we end Monday afternoon, we start to see this area of rain moving across many western parts of Scotland. Eastern Scotland hanging on to some drier and brighter weather here. That rain also arriving into Northern Ireland. But for many parts of England and Wales, it should be a fairly dry end to the day, although we may still just hang on to the cloud and some outbreaks of rain across the very far east of England. So if we move into the evening and overnight period, this area of cloud and rain will slowly spread its way southeastwards. But for many southern areas, we probably will remain dry with the best of the clear skies, and winds also beginning to increase across the far north, giving a very blustery end to the night. And for most of us, a cooler night, but for most towns and cities, we will hold up into double figures. So Tuesday morning we start off with some sunshine across the southeast, but this area of cloud and rain will continue to track its way southwards. Behind it, much colder conditions, a strengthening wind, and that will bring in a fairly frequent amount of blustery showers, and some of these showers will be quite heavy and thundery. By the end of the afternoon, that cloud and rain will arrive into the far south, but hanging on to something a little bit warmer here, but as I mentioned, further north, pretty cold for the time of year.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
I'm just leafing through this book. Absolutely fascinating read, an incredible tale to delve into after the break. We'll be talking about a child refugee who came to this country and became Chancellor. It is, of course, Nadim Zahawi. He has published this book, The Boy from Baghdad, and we'll be talking to him about that incredible story in just a moment.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
More than half of people aged 50 and over feel happier from having a friendship, and 46% feel a sense of belonging too. Tomorrow is the start of Friendship Month. The Oddfellows, a non-profit friendly society that provides older adults with opportunities to create new friendships, is now inviting more people this September to join their local groups and expand their friendship circles through giving a taster activity at local community centres. We're joined now by Jane Nelson, who's the CEO of Oddfellows. Good morning, Jane. Thanks for joining us. As someone in my mid-30s, I've even noticed as well that my own friendship group has diminished over the years as kind of, you know, people get married and have kids and they kind of drift apart and don't make time for each other.
How important is it to have friends separate to your family? What benefit does that bring you?
As you do get older, you do lose friends for a variety of reasons. Either you lose touch or they have an illness or they pass away as you get older. The stats show that people love spending time with their friends. It always takes somebody, doesn't it? Somebody's got to make that first step to send a text to say, do you fancy meeting up for coffee, or do you fancy going to the pub, or whatever the arrangement's going to be. But sometimes somebody always has to make that first step and text or phone. And I think the other key thing is it usually tends to be the same person, but that doesn't matter as long as that connectivity is made, because that's what you need. You need the connectivity. If you think about when we were children, we'd go around the playground and say, will you be my friend? Well, we don't tend to do that as we get older. But be brave, look on Oddfellows website, see all the amazing events we've got on, go to see what's going on in your area, oddfellows.co.uk, or you can telephone 0800 028 1810, and our team will be more than happy to point them in the right direction of their local events, and there's so much going on, 300 going on.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Your lunchtime update on the stories that matter across the UK.
From breaking news and insightful analysis, inspiring stories and lively debates. Are you comparing yourself to a former Prime Minister?
Which is it? Stay informed, stay updated, stay entertained. I just don't know how anyone would not want to be there.
Every weekday from midday.
We are Good Afternoon Britain, only on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent? I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Now, from child refugee to entrepreneur to Chancellor of the Exchequer, Nadim Zahawi has undeniably been on a remarkable personal and political journey.
The former Conservative MP was born and raised in Baghdad before fleeing to the UK aged 11, unable to speak a word of English.
Well, he went on to create one of the country's most successful polling companies before rising through the ranks in Westminster until his career was brought to an abrupt end over his tax affairs.
Now, Nadim Zahawi has released a memoir reflecting on his journey.
Very good morning to you, Mr. Zahawi. Fascinated by this book. I've always thought it was an incredible story, and I very much look forward to reading all about it. You've spoken openly in the past about how you were bullied at school and endured all of that, but how you've sort of risen above all of that. Tell us why you've decided to put pen to paper and share this story.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Must be 2.5 years ago, when I was still Secretary of State for Education, I met a brilliant man called Neil Blair, who is famously agent for a much bigger author, J.K. Rowling. We became good friends. He said, I'm fascinated by your story, Nadim. Would you consider writing a memoir about how you landed on these shores and everything you've done in the meantime? I was still in cabinet, so I had to ask the Prime Minister at the time, Boris Johnson, and of course the Cabinet Secretary, Simon Case, who actually very kindly said, look, it's unusual for a serving Cabinet Minister to write a memoir. It's usually when you exit cabinet. But your story is so interesting and fascinating, we'll make an exception in this case, as long as, and this was the sort of the one condition, is whilst you're serving in cabinet, you don't sort of do the political stuff. Of course, I took about a year to do all the sort of early years of Nadim Zahawi in Iraq, and then coming on to Britain, learning English, with the help of the Sun newspaper and the Dear Deirdre column, and then of course, going on to London University studying chemical engineering and so on. Anyway, to cut a long story short, when I left cabinet so painfully and so publicly, I went back to Neil and HarperCollins, my publishers, and said, look, if you give me another year, I'll put all the political, I'll put the vaccine rollout, I'll put, the ventilator challenge, Her Late Majesty's funeral when I was Chancellor of the Duchy of Lancaster, and then, of course, chairman of the party and leaving government, and in between being Chancellor of the Exchequer, Second Lord of the Treasury. They said, fine, take an extra year, and hence why it's only just been published. And the response has been truly phenomenal, I have to say. People from all walks of life. A lot of young men, brown and black men, have been actually, stopping me in this. I walk all over London now. I try not to, use a car, and lots of people have been inspired by, breaking through that glass ceiling.
Nadim, it is a very inspirational story indeed. However, the last chapter is notes on a scandal, and as you've just alluded to yourself, there is the scandal of your tax situation, which everybody always brings up immediately we mention your name.
Yeah, absolutely. And I deal with it head on in the book, in the final chapter. Everyone has to own their mistakes, and I own my mistake. I should have been much more explicit when I settled with HMRC, that the settlement, of course, was found to be, there's a category in the tax system of careless, i.e. it's not deliberate, but in even that category, there is a penalty with it. And I wasn't explicit enough in my ministerial declaration that Sir Hugh Laurie found, who's the Commissioner for Standards, that the Nolan principle on public service, on ministerial service, requires ministers to be much more transparent. And he found against me on that, and Rishi obviously then asked me to leave cabinet. But look, the theme in the book, I think, and I talk about Boris Johnson and what a consequential prime minister he was to deal with Brexit, obviously the pandemic, a third world war against a virus, and then, of course, war on our continent, where we were told in cabinet that Volodymyr Zelensky probably has a maximum of 2 weeks. It could be up to 3 days before he gets killed by Putin, and Putin invades the country completely. And Boris banged the cabinet table and said, we'll put everything in now. There are no superhumans in politics is the theme. I talk about my early years and being mentored by Jeffrey Archer. People make mistakes in their lives, but do we really want people not to enter the political fray, not to put their name forward, not to deliver public service? I disagree. I think it makes our democracy much richer. Coming from a country where there was no democracy, I've got to tell you, we've got to cherish everything about this country. And it really upsets me when people sort of nonchalantly brush aside free speech. And I know, you guys have been champions of free speech. It is so important, because when it's taken away from you, and I've come from that world, you realise very quickly you end up with Saddam Hussein.
Yeah, and I really do want to delve a bit more into that in just a moment, your sort of upbringing in Iraq and what you fled from. But just whilst we are on the tax affairs, I mean, you ended up paying just shy of $5 million to settle your case with HMRC, but I understand that there is still some beef between you and the tax journalist who initially leaked the story. And I was reading in the newspaper yesterday that he has read extracts from your book and he is challenging your version of events. So is there anything you want to say in relation to that?
No, I think I've said everything I've needed to say on this, and I think people will read the book and make their own mind up as to what they think happened and how I've dealt with it.
Well, let's talk then about that incredible story and how you came here. I think it's fair to say you could easily have ended up being a prisoner of war had you stayed in Iraq. In fact, that was the case with one of your cousins who remained in the country. Your family was wealthy enough to be able to come here to the UK and seek refuge. And yet I believe you sometimes feel a bit of imposter syndrome about being described as a refugee who came to the UK because you were financially fairly independent.
You're right. I feel imposter syndrome in many, many ways. My first cousin, this isn't a distant cousin, my first cousin, my auntie's eldest son, who's a few years older than me, was conscripted to the front line when Saddam took on Iran, the Iran-Iraq war, if you remember, in the 80s. And he was taken prisoner of war by the Iranians. For 12 years, we couldn't find him. His family couldn't find him. His young wife couldn't find him. Not even the Red Crescent, who's meant, the POWs are meant to be, listed and given access to by the Red Crescent, and he wasn't. And then eventually, 12 years later, he showed up with his children. He left as babies, actually, grown up, 12-year-olds, 13-year-olds. A tragic tale that could have so easily have been me. And I wake up in the morning now and look in the mirror and think, I got to be Second Lord of the Treasury in the United Kingdom. That has to be the greatest country on earth. I represented Stratford-on-Avon, a constituency that, over 90% white, affluent, middle class. Yet they voted for Nadim Zahawi, a boy from Baghdad, over and over again. And my majority increased in every election I stood in. So I have to say, sometimes when we talk down our country, let's just remember this country, I think, in many ways, for immigrants, for refugees, probably the greatest country on earth. But I would say one other thing about sort of imposter syndrome. You've got to smash through that glass ceiling. I've sat in cabinet where I've thought, am I really making these big decisions? Or is there someone behind the door on the left-hand side who does that? I remember Michael Portillo, when I was thinking about running for Parliament, saying almost exactly the same thing to me, that you always feel you're an outsider. And we should never forget that about the nation. People feel that they have to battle every day to pay the bills, to pay their mortgage. And by the way, immigrant stock feel the same way. And when they look at the illegal migration, I deal some with that in the book, immigrant families feel equally upset and aggrieved when they see people jumping the queue. It's our sense of fairness in this country. It's a value that we all share. Doesn't matter what your background is, that I think is equally important to address in this book.
Sorry to just jump in, Dawn, because I want to just ask another question there, but I'm so interested by your language there, because there are people who would say, hang on a minute, there are people who come in illegally to this country because there are no safe and legal routes for people who are fleeing war in their countries like you did. They're not queue jumping, they're legitimate refugees, and yet you are saying actually you think it's gone too far in this country, immigration needs looking at. In fact, I think I'm right in saying you're in favour of pulling out of the ECHR as well. Is there a bit of hypocrisy in that? Are you pulling up the ladder that you benefited from?
No, look, let's just unpack that for a second. There has to be safe and legal routes, like we did for Afghans, like we did for Hong Kong, like we did with Ukraine. We need to look at making sure there are safe and legal routes. But there is a much bigger debate here. And you mentioned the ECHR. Look, every law in our country almost, we always review, modernize, and bring up to date. Why is it that this one convention that's been around since the end of the Second World War is sacrosanct? We can never look at reviewing it or bringing it up to date to a new world. If you look at where the world is today, Isabel, if anything south of Libya, there's about 500 million people who, through political instability, economic need, and of course environmental, are now much more mobile. Europe cannot absorb 500 million people. So we need to have a much better debate, quality of debate. Take out the sort of the yaboo politics out of it and say, look, how does our public services cope? Can we really cope? Even if you look at, forget illegal migration, it's about 40,000 people a year. That's abhorrent to everyone. Nobody wants to see people being traded across the channel, putting their life at risk or jumping the queue, right? But legal migration numbers are still, net over 700,000. Can our public services cope with that? What should we be doing for these people in their own countries? So upstream, can we be helping those countries like what Kagami's done in Rwanda to create a seriously sustainable, robust economy? And I know people like Andrew Mitchell and others are passionate about this work in my party, and I hope Labour do the same thing. But in my view, I think Keir Starmer's made a mistake to take away the deterrent for illegal migration, because although it's a small number, it poisons the well of goodwill amongst the British people of every background, every colour and creed, because people's, that value of fairness is, in many ways, what we all care about, and it is under threat when people see people queue jumping by getting on these small buses and of course putting their lives at risk.
Nadim, just one final quick question, running out of time unfortunately. You were vaccines minister during the COVID pandemic, and we've had a report today finding damning evidence of corrupt COVID contracts. Do you think contracts were handed corruptly during the COVID pandemic?
I don't think so. And I tell you what I think happened before my time. So I was brought in to do the vaccine deployment program, and I'm very proud of that. I've just handed in my evidence to the inquiry of how we went from a standing start to delivering almost just shy of 1 million doses a day to protect the nation. I had a great team who delivered that. The integration of our military, our army, with the NHS, with local government, working across party, Sadiq Khan, Andy Burnham, Scottish government, Welsh Labour government, we all worked together, put aside our politics and delivered the vaccine programme. I think on, say, for example, PPE, we should have done what we did with vaccine when we brought in Kate Bingham, an expert in her field, to negotiate those contracts and effectively hold risk responsibly. We didn't do that on PPE until it was too late. And then we brought in Lord Dayton, who stabilised it and brought it onshore brilliantly. No one can complain about that whatsoever, because he's an expert. He did what he was effectively brought in to do. And I think that was the big mistake. I think it was more naivety and wanting to effectively upscale our PPE stock that led to some of the terrible errors of judgment.
I feel like I could talk to you for hours.
Can we just have one more question?
Yeah,
just very, very quickly, Nadim. Headline in the Daily Mail today, you plot one more comeback as London Mayor. Yes or no?
It's Andrew Pearce being mischievous. Look, in politics, as in, I was an entrepreneur, I built YouGov before entering politics. There are always opportunities. At the moment, my big focus...
That's a yes, then,
No. My big focus, I chair the Very Group. We have 4.4 million customers. Many of them are your viewers. And we sell them about £1.7 billion worth of goods. And they're very happy with us. And I'm very, very delighted to be chairman of one of the biggest online retailers in the country.
He knows what he's doing. He knows how to answer and ask questions because he co-founded YouGov. Just one more of these questions on the spot. Who are you backing for Tory leadership? Will you tell us that? I
haven't yet declared for anyone.
I'm calling Jenrick for you.
I like Rob Jenrick. I like we're spoilt for choice in terms of quality of candidate and the ability to communicate. And I have to say, the current government looks like it's stumbling and making early mistakes I didn't expect them to make. I want to see the candidate. I'm now a mere foot soldier, an activist for the party. I want to see the candidate who can demonstrate they can unite the party. If we don't unite, we formed a circular firing squad. Imagine a world where your viewers, right, are having to watch their government talk about the 5 families meeting in smoke-filled rooms at night to try and settle their differences, like an episode of The Sopranos. They were right to throw us out. We have to unite and come back, and the candidate that can do that will get my vote.
OK, fantastic. Thank you, Mr Zahawi. The Boy from Baghdad. Rory Stewart describes this book saying, very few people in Parliament can match Nadim's childhood experience and his passion for politics. I have to agree with that. I look forward to reading it. Thanks very much for your time.
To London Mayor, Nadim. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.
First with that exclusive, we'd appreciate that. What an interesting man.
You could actually talk to him for a long time, and the book is brilliant. I'm just flicking through it. This is definitely a film. And it is an amazing story, how you can come to this country and you can rise to the very top. And London Mayor, indeed.
London Mayor.
That was very nearly a yes, wasn't it?
It wasn't a no.
It wasn't a no. Exactly, that's it. I suppose we're going to get...
Time now for the Great British Giveaway. That is the biggest cash prize that we have ever given. It's £36,000, which equates to...
£3,000 tax-free in your bank account every month for an entire year. Oh, come on, what would you do with that? Well, you don't have to dream about it, you can actually do it, and here's the details to do it.
This is your...
Stroud's closed after an accident with queues towards there. In Blaenau Gwent, the A467 is closed each way between Aberbeeg and Llanhilleth after an accident. In West Sussex, the A280 is closed each way off the A24 between Findon and Clapham, where a lorry is overturned. On the M27 in Hampshire, there's a lane closed westbound, where a breakdown is between junctions 9 and 8 near Fareham, causing queues, and train services are suspended between Exeter, St David's and Honiton because of a signalling problem.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on. GB News, Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, and as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/your say. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria Di Piero, bringing you
PMQ's live here on GB News.
Whenever Parliament is in session on a Wednesday at midday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions. We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQ's live here on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Oh, wow, welcome back. Still to come, it's GB News. Hold on, where are we? What are we doing?
Sport.
We're doing some sport.
Yes, we're going to talk to Coity in just a moment because, of course, the Paralympics came to a dramatic close last night, which ends all of the Olympic period that we've been enjoying so much. Are we good to go to Paul? Just asking the team. Yes, we are. He's all good.
Fiddling with his
I was just not ready.
Again.
Paralympics then, so it's come to an end. Last 2 golds in canoeing, and that's 124 medals in all, 49 golds, second best that they've done since Paralympics in 2016 in Rio.
Wow.
But there's one thing I'd like to show you that happened which didn't involve a British athlete.
Okay.
Now, this happened in a marathon yesterday. Before we show you, I'll just give you a little bit of background here. Now, there was a marathon runner, Spanish marathon runner, Elena Congost. Now, she was disqualified from the finish line. She was just 2 metres. So we're thinking this is 26 miles. So 2 metres, that's 42 kilometres. She's got a vision impairment, so she has someone that runs with her, and they have a link, like a rope, but they have to be attached throughout the entire race. Now, the guide, Mia Bruguera, his name is, he got cramp right towards the end, and as he got cramp, she let go. She was going to help him, just let go for a second, and then off they ran, and it was have a look at this. She got disqualified for this. So look, there she is. That's her on the right-hand side. There's the guy. Now there's the cramp. Now look, that was literally half a second that she let go of that rope to make sure he was okay. Over the line, she ends up with a bronze medal. Very happy, but no, because she let go of the rope. Bless you. That actually meant that she was then disqualified. So, look, they're very happy. I don't know whether that's... they haven't realised that they've been disqualified yet, but just for that moment. And it wasn't even her. It was actually the guide. But rules
that's
is
ridiculous.
rules.
I'm sorry. That's just not fair.
It's a little unfair, isn't it?
Very much
I know
so.
rules is rules and everything like that, but just for that second.
It was a second and he was clearly suffering.
I think they should challenge that.
I think so. And also, did it make any difference to her run? Actually slowed her down. So, therefore, she was disqualified.
Cheating,
That's very unfortunate. So, very unfortunate. A few other bits and pieces. Portugal beat Scotland last night. Cristiano Ronaldo scored in the 88th minute. Scotland, just, if you're ever going to have a bet on Scotland, probably the best thing is bet that the other side's going to score against them in the last 5 minutes, because it just seems to happen all the time. Scott McTominay there, he took the lead. There he is, 7 minutes in. So away in Lisbon, you're thinking that they're going to get spanked by Portugal, went 1-0 up. Then it was 1-1. Bruno Fernandes, also Manchester United. So, I mean, Scott McTominay, not Manchester United anymore. And then Cristiano Ronaldo scored the winner, 88th minute. Northern Ireland lost to Bulgaria 1-0. So there's that. And would you like to see the kids playing?
Yes, we would, absolutely. This is about the number of children you need to take on 3 Dortmund players, I'd say.
Yeah, Borussia Dortmund, it was friendly there because of the international break. Lucas Piszczek, there's Jakub Braskowski and Nuri Sahin. Have a look at this. So the 3 of them, legends. There we are. He's got a penalty. Now, there's 100 kids, all dressed the same. Isn't this brilliant? They're all in their Dortmund kits. So this is... I think they're playing a press here. That's what they're doing. They're going against the other 3. They've got to get the ball down the other end. But the thing is, knowing professional footballers, they're going to take it very seriously. Now, look at this. There's a goal on here. There's about 50 of them breaking forward. It's a goal to the kids. And look at the celebration there, which is very reminiscent of Harry Kane there, if you look at that. So I don't know how Dortmund players would feel about that, but there we are, the kids.
I'm sorry, that kid was definitely offside, VAR.
Do you think so?
Yes, definitely. Sorry.
You know what, it'd probably be the same judge that actually did the Paralympics that's saying, sorry, there may be 10, there may be 100 of you, but it was offside. No problem.
Fantastic. All right, Quitty, thanks very much indeed.
Pleasure.
Stay with us. We're going through the papers one last time in the company of Oscar Redrop and Nikki Hodgson in just a second.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the argument. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together and what have we got, in my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Nana Queer, weekends from 3 p.m.
So, for the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, are non-crime hate incidents a breach of your human rights?
It's crazy, isn't it? Freedom of speech is now on life support here, and we've had, in the last week alone, we've had Elon Musk being threatened. He's now out of Brazil with X. We've had the founder of Telegram basically being arrested, and he's been charged in France. We're not quite sure the circumstances why he was there, whether Macron invited him to the Olympics or whatever, but he's been arrested under several charges. And we've had all sorts of people who've been speaking out are basically being shut down. So it has to be freedom of thought. It has to be freedom of expression. It's one of our fundamental rights under the Human Rights Act of 1998. Article 10 gives you the right to express your opinion and also to air that publicly.
It's basically I say something that somebody doesn't like, so probably one of my monologues. Then somebody can then inform the police that I've upset them in some way. And then that goes on my record, so I now have a criminal record. Yes. Because somebody else who I've never met, who's never met me, has heard something that upset or hurt your feelings. Then if I go for a certain job or I go for my DBS check, which I do regularly because I go and talk in schools, somebody could pull that up and go, well, you did something that had hurty feelings, and so now you can't have that job. That has got to be a breach of my human rights.
Oh, it's absolutely. Article 10, it's a fundamental right to protect your freedom of speech and so on and so forth. And this is what's really worrying, because it's happening around the world, as I say, in Brazil, in France, in various other countries. In America, you know, Zuckerberg, he came out in the last few days and said the pressure that he was put under by the Biden administration. First of all, about COVID, and even jokes he was told to suppress them. The other thing that he was saying about the Hunter Biden laptop. And he said he couldn't speak about that because they were telling him not to. And what he did, he had to fact check, and he turned around and said he regretted that, because the reality is you're working on that sort of basis.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Mark Dolan tonight is your weekend dose of news, debate and entertainment. This sounds like a wild conspiracy theory. Don't miss My Big Opinion. Mark meets And my take at 10.
Democracy is a funny old thing.
And we don't do boring. Not on my watch. I just won't have it.
Let's go and get another glass of that bubbly. You've earned it.
That's Mark Dolan tonight, Saturday and Sunday, 9 to 11, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We are back with Oscar Redrop and Nikki Hodgson, and I just have to say, happy birthday.
Yes,
kept
just
that
confessed.
quiet. 8:47, you let that one drop. I haven't got you
sitting on
anything.
it. Yeah, that's all right. Your company
Happy
is enough of a present.
birthday.
Well, it's Nikki's confession day. She also confessed she fancied Nadim.
So I take it back after seeing that interview.
Oh, well, that's a bit harsh.
I think he was hot back in the day. But
Well, there's lots of pictures inside his book, so I urge people who may share your sentiments to have a proposal.
Oh, that's very funny.
Are we doing front pages, or should we just crack straight on? We're a bit short on time, so let's just crack straight into the papers, shall we? Oscar, The Guardian, this is a story about the Met Police saying arrests at large protests will be made more swiftly.
Yeah, this is a bit of kind of introspection from the Met, really. Obviously, over the last couple of years, we've seen all kinds of quite... almost debilitating for, particularly in London, kind of major cities, protesting on all kinds of issues, climate, and of course the pro-Palestinian marches that we've seen, you know, every single weekend in London and up and down the country. And the Met Police have kind of conceded that they didn't police those particularly well. They didn't get everything right. They probably let things get to boil over in a way that they shouldn't have. And they've kind of pledged moving forward that these will be clamped down on more, these protests, and arrests will be made more quickly. I personally think for each issue, you know, particularly in the climate stuff, you know, we all know about the blocking of ambulances, and we all know, you know, people just trying to get back to work, and actually, you know, people trying to drag people out of the street, and if police can get on top of those things quicker, that can actually only be a good thing, I think.
No, I feel completely the opposite about it. I really oppose this restriction on protest, legitimate protest, not rioting, which is very different. Yeah. You know, it's extremely worrying for a democracy when you start to clamp down on people's ability to just say what they think, which might be different to the government.
But, I mean, the police will only be acting within the powers that they've been given through, you know...
But to do with the Policing and Crime Act, which was reformed, which was designed to start to kind of clamp down on protesting. I really think it's the thin end of the wedge, and it makes me very nervous.
Sort of a bit like Russia and, you know, any anti-government protest
exactly. Why wouldn't it go that way?
Clamped down. OK, well, let us know at home which side of the fence you fall down on. Nikki, this is a story about homeless campers vandalising beach huts, and you know how much those go for sometimes in some of these little hotspots. A group of homeless seaside campers have been accused of prizing materials to use as firewood.
Oh, this is very emotive. I mean, those beach huts are so gorgeous, aren't they? This is in Bournemouth, and I'd love one. I think everybody would love a beach hut, or at least access to a beach hut. But some of the oldest ones have been stripped for timber to be used for firewood, but allegedly, let's say, by this group of homeless campers. And the council themselves had kind of come out and warned people about it. So it sounds like this is what's happened. I mean, it's also really upsetting. It says Britain's oldest public beach hut, built in 1909, has been smashed, had the front of it smashed in. I don't know, can we not have nice things?
Well, it has a picture of people camping on the beach, which I've never seen pictures of homeless people camping on the beach.
And I suppose there's a broader story here about homelessness, right? I mean, let's be real. The majority of homeless people are not vandals. They are very vulnerable. They are often on the streets through no fault of their own, but things like addiction issues, mental health issues, breakup of family. So we're not saying that all homeless people you know, could be culpable for breaking up the beach huts, but it's just one of those stories we just feel like, just so many community tensions.
It's just lack of respect everywhere now, though, Oscar, isn't it? It's sort of like for people, for property. We just don't seem to be able to think, oh, you've got a nice beach hut, let's just leave it being a nice beach hut.
It's the small stuff as well, and it's that kind of broken windows theory of, like, once something's ruined a little bit, like, it's just kind of free reign now, who cares? And I think that is very sad, very sad.
Should we go to Spain? The mayor of Madrid has banished all those rented e-scooters.
Yes.
Oh, God, Nikki, this is your story, isn't it?
I love this. E-scooters are a complete menace, in my opinion. First of all, they're extremely dangerous. The numbers of deaths or accidents caused from people driving them, riding them, and people they encounter, you know, so many people under buses, those kinds of things are absolutely awful stories. You don't need a licence to ride one. I can't believe you see children on them sometimes. And they're just a blight on you know, kind of an area, especially if you want to keep pedestrians safe. I mean, I'm all for this.
Do you feel the same about kind of like Lime bikes, you know, kind of electric bikes?
No, electric bikes are different because you've got to have more actual control and navigation to sort of manoeuvre.
Yeah, agreed.
These scooters are kind of lawless, and you don't need to be able to have any coordination on them.
They are dangerous, and people just leave them on the streets as well. And I think if you're visually impaired and you're trying to walk down the park and there's bikes and scooters all over the place.
They make very little noise, so you can't see them coming.
As well. You can hire them under the influence. There's no way. I think they should be deactivated. You should take a breathalyzer, and also there's no requirement to wear a helmet. And I think given the speed that you can go on one of these, it's incredibly dangerous. I don't know that banishing them is the answer. I'm not a fan of banning things, but I do think, you know, especially as we're trying to sort of get greener as a world, there's got to be green alternatives. But
talking of Madrid and Spain, and Eamonn isn't here because he's on holiday, and we did say lots of you are mentioning it. We did say we'd mention it. Front page of the Daily Mail today, and I believe the Daily Star. There are pictures of Eamonn on holiday, so that's why he's not here, and I'm getting to keep the lovely Isabel company. But we did say we'd mention because lots of you are asking. What do you want to go to?
Well, let's talk about teachers saying that actually they must call out bad parenting. This is according to the former head of Ofsted, Oscar.
This is so punchy, in my view. I mean, I'm not a parent, but I know, you know, and my parents were quite happy to come down hard on me. So I think when teachers, spoke very ill of me, my parents were very much willing to get involved as well.
We agree.
Join the queue, guys. Join the queue. But yeah, good luck. Honestly, like, good luck as a teacher being put in a position where you have to directly critique the parenting of a child. I mean, I just don't see how that's...
It's terrifying and it's dangerous with some parents. I mean, imagine if somebody... I mean, even if you know that, you know, nobody's a perfect parent, right? But if somebody starts attacking your actual style and saying it's impacting your child's school, well, that's obvious, but you're going to feel very, very upset about that. And then just imagine the parents where maybe somebody is slightly antisocial or, you know, already is, I don't know, you get into those horrible harassment situations of teachers. And is it teachers' job? Is it really teachers' job? I don't think it is.
No, it's teachers' job to teach, isn't it?
Yeah.
Absolutely. But, OK, just quickly, we're running out of time. The Times, page 13, 1990s revival have had Oasis, and now what else are we getting a revival of?
We're getting 90s crisps, Frazzles and Skips. And Nigella Lawson has a crisp cauldron, apparently, and I like the sound of this.
I love Nigella. I want to be Nigella when I grow up. She's just so saucy, and she just loves comfort food and makes it acceptable to eat Frazzles and Skips.
She does.
Which, frankly, is the way forward.
Discos are up 15%. Good hangover food. Salt and vinegar discos go.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, there we are. We'll end on that crunchy note. Happy birthday to you.
Happy birthday.
Haven't you, Nikki, over there? No hangover over here. Okay.
Which is more worrying.
Oscar,
thank you very much.
Thanks
so much
as well. Here's Craig Snell with your forecast.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good morning, welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast from the Met Office. Well, today, for most of us, it's certainly going to be a bit of a drier and brighter one compared to the weekend, but there's still plenty of cloud around first thing this morning across many central and eastern parts. Sunshine further west, and that will gradually push its way a little bit further eastwards as the day goes on. So by the afternoon, I think many central areas beginning to brighten up, but always the best of the sunshine further west. But then later on in the day, we will start to see this next area of cloud and rain spreading across the far west of Scotland and Northern Ireland. A fresher feeling day for all of us. We could just still see highs reaching the high teens across the south. So as we end Monday afternoon, we start to see this area of rain moving across many western parts of Scotland. Eastern Scotland hanging on to some drier and brighter weather here. That rain also arriving into Northern Ireland. But for many parts of England and Wales, it should be a fairly dry end to the day, although we may still just hang on to the cloud and some outbreaks of rain across the very far east of England. So if we move into the evening and overnight period, this area of cloud and rain will slowly spread its way southeastwards. But for many southern areas, we probably will remain dry with the best of the clear skies, and winds also beginning to increase across the far north, giving a very blustery end to the night. And for most of us, a cooler night, but for most towns and cities, we will hold up into double figures. So Tuesday morning, we start off with some sunshine across the southeast, but this area of cloud and rain will continue to track its way southwards. Behind it, much colder conditions, a strengthening wind, and that will bring in a fairly frequent amount of blustery showers, and some of these showers will be quite heavy and thundery. By the end of the afternoon, that cloud and rain will arrive into the far south, but hanging on to something a little bit warmer here, but as I mentioned, further north, pretty cold for the time of year.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. In Cambridgeshire, the Longthorpe Parkway in Peterborough is closed eastbound off the Neen Parkway after an accident and oil spill. In Leicestershire, the A563 is closed each way along New Parks Way at Glenfield in Leicester after an accident. In the West Midlands, the High Street at Quarry Bank is closed each way after an accident. On the M26 in Kent, there are queues on the westbound approach to the M25 because of roadworks. In West Sussex, the A280 is closed each way off the A24 between the Findon roundabout and Clapham after an accident where a lorry overturned. There are long delays towards there, and as you divert, in Hampshire, the Hythe Ferry between Hythe and Southampton is closed for safety reasons ahead of repair works taking place in a couple of weeks, and train services are suspended between Exeter, St David's and Honiton because of a signalling problem. That's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website gbnews.com.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
There's an incredible £36,000 to be won in the Great British Giveaway. That's like having an extra £3,000 each month to play with. And because it's totally tax-free, you get to keep every penny and spend it however you like. We could be paying for your entire year until 2025. How amazing would that be? For another chance to win £36,000 in tax-free cash, text CASH to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message, or text BONUS to 63232.
Truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on. GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good morning, welcome back. Now, winter fuel vote rebellion.
Yes, rebel Labour MPs could refuse to vote with the government on their planned cut as the Prime Minister's accused of picking the pockets of pensioners.
Health Secretary Wes Streeting hits out and says he's not happy with the decision, but insists it's necessary.
This comes as tensions rise at the TUC Congress, with union leaders slamming Starmer's decision and urging him to change course.
And Idris Elba has arrived in Downing Street to take part in a summit on tackling knife crime. The Prime Minister is launching a new coalition with the actor and anti-knife crime campaigner, along with police, community leaders and charities.
Backing Badenoch, 1/3 of the shadow cabinet backs her to become Tory leader, saying she has the X factor needed to cut through with the voters.
The US Secretary of State Antony Blinken will arrive in the UK today to begin a 2-day visit covering Ukraine and Middle East talks.
Good morning. It has been a very wet weekend for some of us. What does the weather have in store over the next couple of days? Find out with me coming up in a little bit.
It's just gone 9:01. I'm Isabel Webster.
And I'm Dawn Neeson, and this is GB News Breakfast.
It's absolutely flown by this morning.
It's
hasn't it?
really gone fast.
Yeah, it's been a busy morning.
You know what I've really loved? My favourite part of any show is always reading your comments at gbnews.com/your say. And so many of you are so angry about the winter fuel allowance.
Yeah.
Honestly, it is the most popular conversation topic on here. It's just...
and some lovely comments, actually, from lots of you this morning about our interview with Nadim Zahawi.
Yes.
We had him on, if you missed it, about 8:20. You can watch it back on the app or on our YouTube channel as well, about his journey from Waziria in Iraq to Westminster as a child refugee. He arrived in this country, and he was very candid, wasn't he, about some of the scandals that have surrounded him as well.
Yes.
Didn't dodge any questions from us. So if you get a chance to watch that, have a look at that.
Yeah, a lot of people respecting him, actually, for actually answering questions. There's a thing from a politician.
Exactly.
Probably won't catch on.
He could end up being Conservative Party Mayor of
London Mayor.
Didn't deny that.
He didn't deny it.
Watch that space. Let's turn our attention, shall we, to Wes Streeting. He said he's not remotely happy about having to vote to take away money from pensioners through cuts to the winter fuel allowance.
The Health Secretary has conceded that the controversial policy will have a negative impact on his constituents, but has insisted it is a necessary move.
Well, MPs will vote tomorrow on the plans to scrap the payments for pensioners who don't qualify for pension credit.
This comes as the Tory leadership race continues, where Kemi Badenoch has the backing of more than a third of the shadow cabinet.
Whilst a new poll by Savanta finds that James Cleverly is the public's choice. Of course, he actually came third, I think, didn't he?
Yes,
in
he
that
did,
vote
yeah.
last week on 21 votes. Let's speak now to our political correspondent, Catherine Forster, who joins us from Westminster. Hello there, Catherine. Let's start with these winter fuel payments. Again, another round of terrible headlines for the government. And this is a bit of a pinch point, this vote tomorrow. Could this be a poll tax moment for Sir Keir Starmer?
It's really turning into a huge row, this, isn't it? 6 weeks since it was first announced. And if anything, people seem to be getting more cross. A big vote coming tomorrow in the House of Commons. Now, of course, this measure is going to go through because the Prime Minister, the Labour government have got a huge majority. So, of course, it will pass. But it seems that up to 50 Labour backbench MPs are struggling with this, and there could be potentially dozens of Labour MPs who abstain. There may be some too who actively vote against, though we know the consequences of that could be that they might have the whip suspended, as happened with the two-child benefit cap. So we'll have to see. But certainly this measure will go through, but many people from across the political spectrum absolutely up in arms about this, not just backbench Labour MPs. Labour MPs getting huge numbers of very angry and concerned and upset emails from pensioners, really worried about how they're going to afford to heat their homes this winter. Opposition too from the Lib Dems, from the Conservatives, who I think it's worth saying did consider this measure at least twice in the past, and at the TUC too, a lot of opposition from the unions too. But the government is holding firm. Sir Keir Starmer says, he's prepared to be unpopular. The government will never have more power than it does now at the beginning of a 5-year term with this big majority. And they're saying, look, we've got no choice but to take unpopular decisions. We've got this £22 billion black hole left by the previous government. I think worth saying, though, that 9 billion of that is because of the decision that the government has made to honour the pay review bodies on public sector workers' pay that are going up above inflation. So some of this is a political choice, and it does seem that the government is prioritising public sector workers over and above pensioners.
Lots and lots of, an awful lot of our viewers are saying, I don't want my MP to abstain tomorrow. I want them to vote with their conscience and vote against this. I would respect them as an MP much more if they did that. Very strong feelings out there. So it would be, as Rosie Duffield herself, one of the few to speak out, actually says it's a brave MP that actually does vote against it.
Well, it is, because we don't know what the consequences will be. We saw 7 suspended over the two-child benefit cap. Now, that was a bit different, because that was a manifesto. In the manifesto, they knew that this was coming down the line, whereas this, means testing the winter fuel payment was not in the manifesto. But it's quite possible that any MP who votes against it might have the whip suspended, which means effectively that they're not a Labour MP for a period of time. People like John McDonnell, who used to be Shadow Chancellor under Jeremy Corbyn, he will vote against it. But of course, he is in no way a supporter of the current Prime Minister. So, and also the House of Lords not happy about this either. Now they're encouraging MPs to vote against it, saying, look, if there's enough of a rebellion, we could try to kill this completely. But ultimately, of course, the House of Lords is a revising chamber. It is not the job of the House of Lords to actively block legislation. So an almighty row. And meanwhile, the weather is beginning to change. The energy price cap is going up. We're going to be paying a bit more for our bills. And despite the government saying, look, this is going to be covered by the triple lock, pensions going up, many people very worried about what this means for them.
Isn't it? But meanwhile, it's heating up in the Tory leadership contest. Reports this morning that Mr Cleverly is most popular with the public, but going on last week's vote, Jenrick out there at the front, and Kemi Badenoch has a support of the third of the shadow cabinet, so that's very good news for her.
Yes, indeed. A new poll has suggested that James Cleverly and Tom Tugendhat would be more popular with the general public if either of them became leader of the opposition. But of course, that is put to one side for the moment because it's currently up to MPs. And then when they've whittled down from the current 5 to 4, ultimately to 2, it will be up to Conservative Party members. Now, at the moment, Robert Jenrick and Kemi Badenoch are the clear front runners, both in terms of the number of MPs they've got backing them at the moment. And Kemi Badenoch in particular, although she got less votes last week than Robert Jenrick, is the bookies' favourite. And I was at her launch last week, and what really struck me, both Robert Jenrick and Kemi Badenoch seem to have the momentum, the energy, the buzz. But what really struck me last week, and again, we've heard more today, is the number of shadow cabinet ministers supporting her, people like Laura Trott, like Claire Coutinho, the shadow energy secretary. We've had Kevin Hollinrake today and others. And there's a lot of support behind Kemi Badenoch. But one caveat, she is not universally popular within MPs. Now, plenty of them think that she's got the X factor. She's very good at speaking. She is a bit of a star, frankly, but she does rub some people up the wrong way. And it could be that Conservative MPs may try to block her getting into the final 2, because if she gets to the final 2, it's likely that the members would choose her.
Catherine Forster, thank you very much in our Westminster studio there.
Right, let's turn our attention now to the Trades Union Congress. It's continuing in Brighton today, and as we've been discussing, one of the issues on the agenda will be discussion around the ending of these winter fuel payments, as well as
TUC, a fairer economy and protecting the right to strike, workers' rights. That's another thing a lot of you are getting annoyed about. It's like, hold on a minute, you're taking all this money away from pensioners and giving inflation-busting pay rises to the unions. TUC General Secretary Paul Novak will be addressing the conference today. Joining us down the line from Brighton to discuss what will happen is GB News reporter Adam Cherry.
Hello guys, welcome to the conference. As you can see, the doors are now open, delegates and visitors filing in. There's already a small protest growing outside, some Palestine protesters handing out leaflets calling for a ceasefire. When you come in, go through security, get registered over here. As you see some guys getting registered already. And then Stephen's going to follow me over, we're going to come through. I've already scanned in, so this is a bit of showbiz trickery here. You'll see all the stands here. This is on 2 floors, so there are stands. Hello guys, how you doing? That's a CDU. 2 floors of these. Oh, watch out, Steve. There's a pillar there. 2 floors here of stands, and a lot of these guys, as you say, are here because the General Secretary, Paul Noak, is delivering his speech later in the day. We already know basically what he's going to say. A lot of friendly language to say, great, 15 years of Tory rule, or 14 years of Tory rule over. We now have our friends, the Labour Party, in. But he's going to say they're not going to take their foot off the gas. They're going to keep the pressure on because of these unpopular decisions that the Prime Minister is taking on the winter fuel allowance, on pay rises, which he says don't really go far enough. He wants pay restoration for 2010 levels at minimum. So although they're shaking hands and slapping backs, actually under the surface there is some tension. Tomorrow the Prime Minister is here himself, so we'll see what he has to say. But that comes on the day of the winter fuel allowance vote, so he'll probably be happy to get away from Westminster for a while.
Very much, Adam. I have to say, I thoroughly enjoyed that Hall of Fame
around, yeah, the wander
How
around.
to make a TUC conference, which some might think could be a little bit dry. Very lively and interesting. You did that for us this morning. Thanks very much indeed. Almost want to go. Not
I wouldn't
quite,
go that
though.
far. No, I wouldn't go that. I'll tell you one person that probably doesn't want to go, and that's Keir Starmer.
Yeah,
he's going to get.
He's got to tomorrow, though.
I know, he's got
just
to kick
before
it,
that vote, which
kicking in
will
the
be
house.
a little bit awkward. Let's talk about weight loss drugs, shall we? Because they're being used more and more frequently around the world. But some experts are concerned that people are actually using them unsafely.
Yes, indeed. New research has revealed the hotspots in the UK for people researching these drugs online, and it's Bolton is top of the list.
Well, our North West of England reporter, Sophie Reaper, has been to Bolton. She's been speaking to one woman who lost 10 stone using one of the drugs. Here's the incredible story.
Saxenda, Wegovy and, of course, Ozempic. Just some of the weight loss drugs making recent headlines. Used to suppress appetite, if taken correctly, these drugs can help those who need it to lose large amounts of body fat. Just one of those people was Colleen Calnan.
I was over 25 stone at that point and was delusional, and I had amazing results. I lost like 10 stone, and it was a hard journey, 150%, but it was one of the best things I've done. Obviously I've had a gastric sleeve now I'm back to what I should be, I suppose.
But despite her amazing results, Colleen still advises caution.
It's dangerous. It's a black label medication. Yes, it changed my life, but it needs to be used responsibly.
Speaking on weight loss drugs, the National Medical Director for the NHS has also warned medical professionals to take care. He said they can be dangerous if they're being prescribed without proper checks, so online pharmacies and clinics need to act responsibly. They should have safeguards in place, including checking a person's weight in person to keep patients safe. At the Prestwich Pharmacy in Greater Manchester, they're advising people only to use these products with the appropriate support.
Always use a professional. You may need to get bloods done. You certainly have to measure your blood pressure. It's really important that you have a support network that helps you get to your target goal. This isn't about a quick fix. It is about a lifestyle change.
However, despite warnings, these weight loss drugs are still in high demand. In particular, new data from the Simple online pharmacy has found that 4 of the top 10 places in the UK researching these drugs can be found in Greater Manchester, with the town of Bolton taking the top spot.
Would you ever consider using a weight loss drug? No, not me. Not because of my age and because of the complications of using them.
I would, just because I think it's easier than going to the gym, and obviously everyone my age wants to be skinny.
I think if it work and it wouldn't have really bad side effects, then absolutely.
If you're going to lose weight, you should do it the ethical way, like working out.
A topic that divides opinion, the use of weight loss drugs has skyrocketed in recent years. And for now at least, it's a growing trend. Sophie Reaper, GB News.
Well, I was going to say, it's just the issue, isn't it, around people who are using these weight loss drugs and actually preventing people with type 2 diabetes who actually need them for their condition
Which is what
from getting them. And there's this worldwide shortage.
Yeah, that's what
and then
really...
lots of people turning to the internet for an alternative, and then you get yourself in these situations. Have you been affected by it? We always love to hear from you, but really interesting report from Sophie there.
Yeah, very interesting. That's what they were originally invented for, type 2 diabetics, and now you can't get them because they're not available, because people who do not have weight loss issues are taking them It's mad. Stop doing it. And they're not always safe as well. They do have side effects.
Lots of side effects.
Yeah, so be careful out there.
Right, let's talk about the Great British Giveaway. It's pretty great, I've got to be honest. £36,000 could be yours.
I know, not mine. Stop looking at me like that.
Sorry,
I'm not allowed to enter, nor are you.
that.
Because that is like an extra £3,000 tax-free in your bank account each month for an entire year. Oh, what would you do with that, Isabel?
Well, start off with a lovely holiday. That would be great.
Yes. Well, we can't, unfortunately, but you can, and here's the details you need.
This is your channel.
And the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. Weekdays from midday.
A window cleaner is battling to prove he has the only portrait of William Shakespeare made in his lifetime.
Yes, so owner Stephen Wadlow has been trying to validate the painting for years. He's had it x-rayed, he's had it analysed by experts, he's had it scientifically dated back to 1595 when the playwright was 31 years old. If it is the Bard, it could be worth north of £200 million.
Steve, welcome to GB News. First of all, just explain how you came to have this painting in your possession.
It was sat there all my lifetime sort of thing while I was growing up, above the television in the corner. It was only back about 12 years ago that a visitor, she said, I think it looks like William Shakespeare, I like your copy of William Shakespeare, and was shocked to see it was an original painting. So it was only then that I started researching, and the different institutions have helped with the x-rays and all the rest of it. But then, is it actually Shakespeare? Well, all the facial comparisons, technology, everything like that, all matches with the Droshell, which is the only known 2D image of Shakespeare. And who do you go to find that out?
There's a suggestion in the Sun's write-up of this story that you've been struggling to be heard in the academic world, the lofty art world. It's all a bit snooty. Yes. It's about who you know, and you're a tradesman.
Yes. That is definitely true in some avenues, but then I have to say, and it's lovely to be able to have this opportunity to say it, there's other people in that world that have been fabulous. It's taken a long time to sort of get listened to. We want the discussion out there because all the evidence that we've got indicates that this really should be discussed.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Mark Dolan tonight is your weekend dose of news, debate and entertainment.
This sounds like a wild conspiracy theory.
Don't miss My Big Opinion. Mark meets and My Take at 10.
Democracy is a funny old thing.
And we don't do boring, not on my watch. I just won't have it.
Let's go and get another glass of that bubbly. You've earned it.
That's Mark Dolan tonight, Saturday and Sunday, 9 to 11, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Right, Britain's Newsroom's coming up at 9:30. Andrew Pearce is here and Bev Turner on her way. I have to say, it's good that we've got you, Andrew, because just we were talking about this interview an hour ago with Nadim Zahawi, and we asked him about your piece in the Mail today about whether or not he is going to stand for the London mayoral position. He didn't say no.
Because he is giving it very, very serious consideration. Look, he's done some really big jobs. He was the vaccines minister, hugely successful. He virtually walked on political water then. Education Secretary, short-lived Chancellor under Boris Johnson, and then, of course, his career ended in tears as Tory chairman because it turned out he'd had to pay HMRC a rather large fine over a bill, over a row over a tax bill.
But to be fair, he did talk about that this morning.
And
he was honest.
He's clever. He's run a business. He knows how to make things work.
Refugee.
Came here from Iraq. Baghdad with his family. So he would, and in 4 years' time, surely London's going to be sick to death of Sadiq Khan. He's on his third term. What is he? Vladimir Putin? Is he going to run again?
Very probably. But did you think he'd make a good London mayor?
I think he would.
Yeah.
I think he would. I think he'd be a good choice.
Very popular.
Yeah.
And funnily enough, what was supposed to go in your column ended up going on the front page of the Mail.
It did. This is an extraordinary story because back in 2017, when Theresa May's government was proposing the idea of taking winter fuel off 10 million pensioners, the Labour Party published research saying it would lead to the premature deaths of up to 4,000 pensioners a year. The Shadow Cabinet endorsed that report, and who was a member of that Shadow Cabinet? Sir Keir Starmer.
Of course.
So does he think Was it wrong then, or was it wrong now? Because both positions can't be right. Because if 4,000 pensioners were at risk in 2017, they sure as hell are now. Well, there's even more, because there's more pensioners around.
Yeah. I don't think... I mean, even the TUC are having a go at them over this policy. It's indefensible.
It is. I'm going to the TUC later. I'll be presenting down there from Brighton tomorrow, and it'd be very interesting to test the water with trade union leaders, because...
Well, Starmer's giving a speech there, isn't he?
He is, tomorrow.
Vote,
he is, yeah. And I can't believe that the trade union Congress will have any truck with this whatsoever.
The trouble is, Starmer's actually just doubling down on this. He's absolutely not one for turning. He's saying...
Oh, I'm tough.
That actually, we've given them the triple lock guarantee in the pension. He's saying that Winterfield payments are actually not going to be as bad as they were last winter. And he's talking, again, referring to these millionaire pensioners that, frankly, just don't need...
Yeah, but what about but what about the pensioners who aren't millionaires, who are on barely £12,000 a year?
Well,
a million pensioners below the poverty line are going to lose this benefit. And there's another million who don't claim the pension credit. It's 243 questions, by the way, if you do decide to claim it.
Dawn knows this because she downloaded the folder.
Yeah, 243 questions. Is this to help your mum?
I can't even understand.
No, there we are.
She certainly can't.
You can just imagine it's baffling, and people are going to give up halfway through, which is why they make them so complicated.
Yeah. Well, we look forward to the programme. And it sounds like a cracker. That's it from us for this morning. It's been lovely having you, Dawn.
Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure to work with you.
I'll be back with Ben Leo tomorrow. Here's your forecast.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good morning, welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast from the Met Office. Well, today, for most of us, it's certainly going to be a bit of a drier and brighter one compared to the weekend, but there's still plenty of cloud around first thing this morning across many central and eastern parts. Sunshine further west, and that will gradually push its way a little bit further eastwards as the day goes on. So by the afternoon, I think many central areas beginning to brighten up, but always the best of the sunshine further west. But then later on in the day, we will start to see this next area of cloud and rain spreading across the far west of Scotland and Northern Ireland. A fresher feeling day for all of us. We could just still see highs reaching the high teens across the south. So as we end Monday afternoon, we start to see this area of rain moving across many western parts of Scotland. Eastern Scotland hanging on to some drier and brighter weather here. That rain also arriving into Northern Ireland. But for many parts of England and Wales, it should be a fairly dry end to the day, although we may still just hang on to the cloud and some outbreaks of rain across the very far east of England. So as we move into the evening and overnight period, this area of cloud and rain will slowly spread its way southeastwards. But for many southern areas, we probably will remain dry with the best of the clear skies, and winds also beginning to increase across the far north, giving a very blustery end to the night. And for most of us, a cooler night, but for most towns and cities, we will hold up into double figures. So Tuesday morning, we start off with some sunshine across the southeast, but this area of cloud and rain will continue to track its way southwards. Behind it, much colder conditions, a strengthening wind, and that will bring in a fairly frequent amount of blustery showers, and some of these showers will be quite heavy and thundery. By the end of the afternoon, that cloud and rain will arrive into the far south, but hanging on to something a little bit warmer here, but as I mentioned, further north, pretty cold for the time of year.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. On the A1M in North Yorkshire, there's a lane closed northbound after an accident between junctions 42 and 44 towards the Tadcaster turn-off, causing delays. In Greater Manchester, the A538 is blocked by an accident off junction 6 of the M56 at Hale. In Derbyshire, the A38 partly blocked southbound by an accident at Derby Road at Horsley, causing queues. In Leicestershire, the A563 is closed each way along New Parks Way at Glenfield in Leicester after an accident. In Cambridgeshire, the Longthorpe Parkway in Peterborough is closed eastbound off the Mean Parkway after an accident and oil spill. In the West Midlands, the High Street at Quarry Bank is closed after an accident. On the M4 in Newport, there's a lane closed eastbound between junctions 24 and 23A from Caldra to the Magor services. There are long delays with queues from junction 27 at High Cross, and train services are suspended between Exeter St David's and Honiton.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website gbnews.com.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
This Bank Holiday Monday, we'll be celebrating National Dog Day by uncovering how many pet owners would rather spend the bank holiday with their pet over their partner. In fact, new research has uncovered the 5 key personas that make up Generation Pet. That's a new wave of post-pandemic pet owners, with 58% saying they worry about their pet being diagnosed with a serious illness. Well, joining us now to tell us more about how we should be caring for our pampered pooches is Dr. Edwina